Russia was the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. And they'd say, oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America? I said, well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers. They have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government.
Good evening, everyone. I am your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. If you're enjoying what you see, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're alerted whenever we go live, because we're constantly doing new shows, and I'm always taking over White Guy Wednesday. Just regentrifying. I don't know. Maybe I'm lowering the property value. All right, I'll stop. It's been a while since I've been on the screen. It's good to be back for a little bit. Definitely have to take off again this weekend, but we do have a good show today talking about something that my old ass loves talking about. But before we start, there's also some big news in the TIR camp. My work is finally being published. My essay, I Was a Teenage Anarchist, will be available next month in print. From Everyday Analysis, talks have intensified about a live, intimate book launch. Until I've been gone and pressing everybody. We're going to do a book launch in the Bay Area, where I am from. I'm going to be joined with a bunch of friends from the scene. And when I say friends, I mean some longtime legends, more guys from the metal scene, the punk scene. But definitely they have some roots in punk. The only name I can't confirm right now is Chris Contos, who you might know as the original drummer from Machine Head. He's also, I believe he's the original drummer in Attitude Adjustment. He's in Forbidden right now. I've known Chris for some time. Really good dude. Great stories. So we're going to be doing, read a little bit from the book. We're going to have a little talk, Chris and I. And then, of course, we're going to take Q&A from the audience. And I wish I could name some of the other names that Chris threw out. But we're just waiting for some more people to confirm. But we do have the date, and that is November 18th in the Bay Area. So I'm really, really excited about that. Now that is out the way, let me bring in I don't even want to really say guest, because he's more of a co-host for this. My comrade in this trip down memory lane, but also it's going to have some deep dive analysis. I have to say, there's a few people who I really love their film takes, and I love JG's film takes. JG is the guy that when he says something, I go, I gotta check that movie out. So I appreciate that. Please welcome the homie, JG Michael.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
Dude, thanks for agreeing to do this. Originally, we were going to talk about a movie that you were like, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm reading it, and I'm sure you're saying it kind of like, whatever. But I'm reading it in your more stern tone. For no good reason other than the low self-esteem demon has possessed me. And I'm reading your message. You're like, I don't know about both those movies. I just like Carol Kane. And I was like, yeah, I like Carol Kane because it's Latka's wife. I wanted to talk. There's a movie called When a Stranger Calls Back. And it is a sequel that came out, maybe 10 years after its predecessor.
Yeah, it had to have been something like that, yeah.
And that's where Toussaint and I get the joke. The call is coming from inside the house. because I felt that there are multiple movies during that time that did that thing, and it comes from that urban legend of the babysitter watching the kids and phone rings. But the sequel to that, which comes out in 1990, also before we have caller ID, is called When a Stranger Calls Back. And that opening scene, there's two movies where their opening scenes to me are terrifying because I've lived it. Jeepers Creepers, which to me is like a mediocre horror film. That opening though, the first like 20, 30 minutes of that movie is frightening because I've been on those roads to nowhere.
Yeah, that movie for me takes a nosedive once they get into the when they've explored the layer of the creeper. I'm like, it kind of goes in a different direction. That's the thing with When a Stranger Calls Back.
Yeah.
I like the first 20 minutes, but then it feels so different after that. The whole movie. So
somebody's teasing me about my shirt. And maybe if you guys remind me tomorrow, I'll tell you the story of my fake polo shirt in high school. You will feel sorry for me. But in that movie, there's a young lady who is babysitting some kids, and she gets a knock on the door from a gentleman saying that he needs to use the phone. I actually remember when people did that. Knock on your door. Hey, can I use your phone? I'm stuck. Because she's in a suburban area where there's probably no payphones, right? If you lived in a suburb or anything similar to a suburb, there was probably hard to find a payphone. And the guy goes, can you call the auto club for me? And he gives her a number, and she starts dialing the number, and then she just doesn't do it, which I kind of always like, why didn't she do it? Why didn't she just call the auto club? Anyway, she doesn't call the auto club and assumes the guy is just going to go away. And the gentleman comes back, and she gets really scared. She tries to, she can't call the auto club because remember, he cuts the line. He cuts the line. So instead of saying, I can't call because the line's cut, that's why she didn't. She just goes, I called. But of course, the guy knows. He comes back like a third time and he goes, you're just a babysitter. Like, I know you're here alone. And basically says the same thing in the first one, have you checked the children kind of thing. And she goes up and the kids aren't there. And, then there's this kind of insane chase throughout the house, or she's trying to run out, and she's trying to get out of the house. And I don't care what you say, JJ, that's the scariest thing in the world. She looks over and you see the guy, like the guy was in the house the whole time. And, she opens the door and runs out, but the family happened to come home and, they never find the guy. Totally scared the bejesus out of me.
No, trust me, I love the opening act of When a Stranger Calls. And I think Jill Schoelen is actually one of the most underrated scream queens of that era. Because
she's also in Popcorn.
Well, Popcorn, Cutting Class with Brad Pitt.
Cutting Class, that's right.
And she's in The Stepfather, which is my favorite, unforgotten 80s horror movie.
She kind of has a real flat delivery. And I think that's why she never really showed her boobs. I don't think she ever showed her boobs. Mm-hmm. Do we remember Linnea Quigley from her great acting, or do we remember Linnea Quigley because she couldn't keep her clothes on in any movie? Right? If I saw her, she was going to be in a movie, I would watch it. Not because I had like a crush on her or anything. I just knew the movie would be pretty good. And I remember watching Cutting Class probably at 2 a.m. in my preteen years on Cinemax. Like I think this is before Brad Pitt was like a thing.
Oh, it was way before he was.
Yeah. I definitely remember watching that movie like super late at night. Like, what is this crap? And When a Stranger Calls, I think, is a pretty good movie, but it also falls in line with everything that was coming out in 1980. Everything post Halloween, and then Friday the 13th becomes real predictable. I think. I don't know. Do you like The Prowler and stuff like that?
I think The Prowler is a much more interesting movie than people realize. I mean, the villain is like, supposed to be a World War II vet or whatever, and I always found that very odd. I mean, to me, it's an odd movie. It's like there's arguments that it could be seen as like weirdly questioning of war.
Mhm.
So I do like The Prowler a lot, but yeah, a lot of those movies all sort of blend together. I get what you mean. I was watching a slasher a while back called Silent Madness. And it like after I watched it, I was just like, this blends in with every other movie. I'm not going to remember it.
Was it Italian?
No, I think it was like a Canadian movie. It was originally made in like 3D. It's like an asylum slasher, and they even have like a Dr. Loomis character in it, but it's played by a woman. So it's basically just a straight Halloween ripoff.
And somebody says in the chat they just watched Halloween 3. I am the biggest proponent of Halloween 3. I think Halloween 3, I think it's so much better than Halloween 2. And it's an enjoyable movie, and I really wish they would have went down that rabbit hole of making them an anthology series. I love Halloween 3.
I love Halloween 3 too. Sans the weird like anti-Irish sentiment in it. It's an interesting movie because it almost is like I don't know if I should politicize it this much. It's like weirdly anti-capitalist in a way. Like the evil Silver Shamrock, the evil corporation is at the heart of everything. So, I think that's a much more subversive film than people give it credit for.
I think it falls in line with Carpenter's politics.
Well, definitely Carpenter's, yeah.
He's a new lefty from the 60s that definitely sees the man as a problem, as many of his acolytes did. I think that, again, that's why a lot of those movies from those guys are so good because they did have that analysis.
Although to be fair, we have to always note, Carpenter didn't direct Halloween 3. It was Tommy Lee Wallace, who I believe also did Fright Night Part 2.
Which is a slept-on classic as well. Fright Night 2.
I like Fright Night Part 2 a lot. I love the role reversal between the main character and Roddy McDowell's Peter Vincent.
Yeah. Fright Night 2 is like, don't sleep on Fright Night 2. And that Fright Night 2 scared the bejesus out of me as well. As a little person trying to watch it. Halloween
3, though, I think is a good segue into the topic we agreed upon about, the satanic panic movies. So in a weird way, it fits into that. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yes. Originally, we wanted to talk about, because after I reading JG's response to talking about When a Stranger Calls, I'm thinking, and something had crossed the screen, and I was like, oh, let's do one on all these movies that came out during the 80s that I would directly link to the moral panic that we call the Satanic Panic, Trick or Treat, The Gate, some of the Canadian ones, Black Roses, if anybody's seen that. What's another Satanic Panic film?
I mean, there's a whole like subgenre in and of itself of like rock and roll horror. You know? So there's Black Roses, Trick or Treat, Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Rock and Roll Night, the horrible film. That is like one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
But for some reason, it gets an amazing Blu-ray release.
I think it's one of those so bad it's good. Someone says video nasties. Yeah, a lot of these were video nasties in the UK. But look, as many people know that are watching and will be listening to this show on audio only formats, most of us on TIR, and I believe present company, are Gen Xers. And as Gen Xers, there's nothing that was more profound in our growing up than the Satanic Panic and the end days of the Cold War. Tonight, we're going to be speaking about some of these films. And JG wrote notes for me for tonight, which I found extremely helpful. And I went to go rewatch Trick or Treat because I thought JG had seen The Gate. And JG goes, oh, by the way, I haven't seen The Gate. And I was ready to walk to Pittsburgh to shake the shit out of you. How can you, like, what bubble did you live in? How fundamentally Christian was your family? Are you some sort of weird Mormon? Were you on punishment from the years of 85 to 92?
Dude, you're forgetting I'm a millennial.
What year were you born?
I was born in 91.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm an old soul, though. So I used to. I'll say this.
Are you
I used
smoking
to
vegan
see.
cigarettes?
What's that?
Are you smoking vegan cigarettes?
I wish. I need to cut down on the cigs, but haven't had one all day. Hope it doesn't bother anyone. But the gate. I used to see that when I would go to this. There was a video store called Incredibly Strange Video. That's how I got into all of this. My friend Bruce Lentz ran it. He's also known as Mr. Schlock. He had a public access thing on TV as Mr. Schlocko or whatever, and he ran this video store, Incredibly Strange Video, and I would always see the gate because the cover was like so, eye spinning.
Awesome.
You just had those words, the gate on it, and then it looked like tombstones and whatnot. And then there was a sequel too, right? I mean,
yes,
there's
Gate,
Gate
2.
and I don't think it's a sequel in name only. There is some connection.
The
main actor back.
The one of the main actors does come back. Stephen
Dorff doesn't.
Does not come back. I think Bobby Hill is in it. Pamela Segal Aldon. I believe she's the woman in it. I could be wrong, but I think she's a woman in it. I love any movie that had the backwards playing of records. I was all about. And if your horror movie was going to have like the backwards playing of a record, count me in, because I definitely was all into the iconography of heavy metal, despite what I'm wearing today. But the main movie we're going to be discussing is Trick or Treat, the 1986 movie. JG, you sent some notes and talking points that I found interesting. You put the Satanic Panic movie era all the way back to the Exorcist movie. Can you elaborate on that? And would you say Rosemary's Baby maybe even before The Exorcist, or do you think that the Tate murders put that movie in a different category all on its own?
Well, before I get to that, I mean, I think there's always been, room for these sort of moral panics to exist even before the time we remember in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few really great movies that have come out over the years that were pre-Satanic Panic, but sort of dealt with the same themes of the Satanic Panic. One movie I really wanted to mention, and I forgot to write about it in the notes, was a 1930s movie. It was a pre-code movie, I believe, that Universal Studios did, called The Black Cat. Edgar G. Ulmer's The Black Cat. That's an incredible movie, and it's one of the early movies. When you think of movies about satanic cults, that's one of the early satanic cult horror movies with Bela Lugosi versus Boris Karloff. And I would highly recommend people watch it because it's weird watching pre-code horror. They're much more violent for their time than you would expect. And there's like weird elements of like subversive sexuality in movies.
Was that right after the Black Dahlia?
I think so, yeah. It may have been. I think it was 1934. But there were always movies like The Black Cat that came out that sort of pushed the limits and sort of played into fears of Satanists and occultists. There was an early example is actually a silent film that's very hard to find. I've seen it at a movie convention once, but it's called The Magician, and it's a silent film from the 1920s, I believe, that's essentially sort of about Aleister Crowley. So, there's always been this sort of interest and fear of the occult. But I think it really breaks out after The Exorcist, which people forget. If you weren't alive in the 70s, you have to watch documentaries on it. I mean, The Exorcist scared the bejesus out of people, even people that weren't, religious. And then Rosemary's Baby, I think even more so in a lot of ways, because there is that cult element to it. And I think that really kickstarts the fear of Satan in the suburbs. Satan is going to corrupt our children.
I mean, Rosemary's Baby also doesn't really take place in a suburb. I think most of it takes place in a city, right? Isn't it New York?
No, that's true. That's true. But
and also, again, I think the Tate murders does something to that film. And I think this is just my opinion. There's a lot of messaging, in my opinion, in Rosemary's Baby with women's liberation, because every man is taking her, grabbing her by the hand, telling her things, crazy woman, nothing's wrong, right? I think there's some messaging in Rosemary's Baby that's pretty interesting. I don't know what messaging is in The Exorcist.
I think the messaging in The Exorcist is kind of obvious in a lot of ways. I think William Friedkin, God rest his soul, he was an incredible director, just passed away. I love William Friedkin, but the dude, I think it would be very hard to argue that he's not a rather conservative or even reactionary director. Because if you were to take all his films together, sort of all his films taken together in a lot of ways gives you this idea of someone who sees the world as breaking apart at the seams, in a state of moral decay. And that's probably most notable with a movie like Cruising with Al Pacino, which, I know it's sort of gained an audience in the LGBTQ community now, but back then it was viewed as, horribly homophobic. It's basically Al Pacino going undercover to find a killer in the gay S&M district of, I believe, San Francisco, or it may have been New York. I
think it's San Francisco.
Yeah, I think it is. But that's also a good movie. It's kind of a quasi horror movie, but the point is, Friedkin's movies, if you take them together, he sees the world being torn apart at the seams by occultism, homosexuality, drugs, and corruption. That's how I've read him. I do think there's ambiguities where you can read his movies differently, but for what it's worth, Friedkin was kind of half open about being a conservative. In any case, The Exorcist, for me, this is a movie about a girl who plays with the Ouija board. She doesn't have a father figure. Her mom is off in Hollywood, right? I think there is that conservative thing of like, oh, what has happened to the American family? Why are these women getting jobs and being career women instead of staying at home and taking care of the child? Because there is an implication there that, this is how Reagan came to be possessed.
That's Reagan. How funny is that? I think that name's coincidental because when it comes out in 73.
Very much, yeah.
But a lot of the satanic panic that we know comes from this fear of women in the workforce not taking care of the kids, leaving the kids in these daycares, where there's men there. That used to not be a big deal, men watching your children. And by the 80s, that is a big problem, to the point where we don't even really see that many men teachers anymore at the primary level. Sorry about that. I think when we talk about this whole era as well, we can't talk about it without mentioning Anton LaVey. And you had mentioned LaVey briefly in your notes, and way more about him than I do. And I think I played a benefit for the Church of Satan. It was a benefit for women's reproductive rights in like 2015. We can't really mention this era without LaVey. Can you talk a little bit about Anton LaVey?
Yeah, well, LaVey sort of has his own mythology that he creates in Hollywood. The old legend that he conjured up was that he was actually in Rosemary's Baby as the devil. And that's all BS. But he was a carny. He was a carny, and he was a carny. He was a lot of things, but most of all, he was sort of a carny huckster. And I don't even mean that necessarily super insultingly. I think he knew how to get people's attention in Hollywood. He was very friendly with people like Sammy Davis Jr. So much so, in fact, that Sammy Davis Jr. ends up being in a TV pilot that failed called Poor Devil, where Sammy Davis Jr. Is sent by Christopher Lee, who plays Lucifer, to Earth as a bubbling demon to collect souls. And that the pilot of the show actually has an extensive mentions of the Church of Satan. And it's sort of a jokey, lighthearted affair. But that shows you the Church of Satan was really in the air at the time. People knew about it. It freaked out Christians. And it was good for Hollywood in a weird way, right? Because Anton LaVey was actually employed in a number of Hollywood movies, including the Universal Studios movie, The Car, with James Brolin about the possessed car.
Yeah.
He actually served as a technical advisor. Now, I don't know what exactly that means, but he also served on the Al Adamson Schlockfest, a very re-edited Schlockfest, Dr. Dracula. and a 1970s movie called Lucifer's Women. But the film that I think LaVey was most involved with is, I mean, really technical / creative advisor. I'm not sure he did much of anything. I think they just wanted to put his name on those because, you know, it's like, ooh, the mystique of it.
Yeah, we're keeping it real.
Mm-hmm. But he's in a little movie that Robert Fjost did, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, Robert Fjost, but he did a movie called The Devil's Reign. And The Devil's Reign is a 1970s satanic cult horror movie.
Ernest Borgnine?
Ernest Borgnine is
Yeah.
the satanic cult leader. William Shatner is in it. His face gets melted off. Tom Skerritt is in it.
Great cast.
Everyone is in this movie. And in the third act, you actually get to see Anton LaVey in a movie. He actually plays the high priest, and or one of the high priests. And, you know, he served as technical advisor on it, and he actually has a cameo in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because that wasn't the first connection between Robert Fjost and Anton LaVey. The Vincent Price vehicles, the Abominable Dr. Fives and Dr. Fives Rises Again, also are influenced by LaVey. Because in the Abominable Dr. Fives movies, Dr. Fives is sort of this strange character who has these mechanical dolls that help him play music with him. Mm-hmm. You know, they're sort of his only friends. And Anton LaVey had this big thing about, I forget, I'm blanking on what he actually called them, but he would always talk about creating artificial environments, I believe, where you would have, I mean, basically mannequins to interact with if you didn't want to be around people because you're such a misanthrope. I mean, LaVey was a weird dude, right? But anyways, you know, I think it's interesting that Robert Fjost based the Dr. Fives character in part on an aspect of LaVey. Because I think it shows that people in Hollywood were really taken in by this character. You know, I mean, this is a dude who would walk around LA, go up to kids and be like, oh, if you rub my magic ring, you can have a wish granted. I mean, he had a pet lion. I mean, this dude, obviously, if you were in San Francisco or if you're just in California, of course, Hollywood would be attracted to this dude. And I think it's interesting because in a weird way, LaVey and also others like the former military official Michael Aquino, who he was in the Church of Satan, but then went into the Temple of Set. Aquino also does advising on ritual scenes for a little scene drive-in fodder movie directed by the late William Girdler called Asylum of Satan. But there were people like LaVey and Aquino doing all these movie appearances. There was a whole documentary called Satanist, the Devil's Mass, and Witchcraft 70 that featured LaVey. And he really sort of captures the imagination of Hollywood. And it's interesting because at the time, I think a lot of this was treated as very jokey, right? You had the movie, that TV pilot I mentioned, Poor Devil, which actually makes reference to the Church of Satan, right?
Oh God, You Devil. Remember those horrible movies?
What's that?
Oh God, You Devil. Are you old enough to remember those?
The Oh God, You Devil films. Well, my favorite of these is, I mean, it's a trashy drive-in film, but Satan's Cheerleaders, in which they get abducted by like Yvonne DiCarlo and John Ireland. It's a cult led by fucking Lily Munster and John Ireland, and these cheerleaders end up having to fight the Satanists. But it's very much a horror comedy, and it's interesting because in the 70s, I think you could do that more. In a weird way, I think the 80s, you know, is when fears about the satanic forces in our society in the suburbs or in the city, I think it gets more self-serious in the 80s. I don't know if you agree with that. But.
Yeah, I think you have this thing called a PG-13 rating that I didn't realize came out in 1984. So before 84, we don't have a PG-13 rating. Watch a PG movie before 1984.
Right.
You'll hear curse words and see a boob.
Right. Smokey and the Bandit Part 3.
Is that PG?
It's PG, but it has boobies in it.
Oh, dude, your PG movies before 84 had boobs. And
I always tell people a movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I mean, they were considering giving a PG rating originally when it came out.
There's like no blood.
You don't see any violence in it.
No, it's all.
But I think it would have gotten a PG-13 had a PG-13 existed back then.
Somebody, Michael Ray, shout out to Michael Ray, because he knows. Thanks, Temple of Doom, because that's actually the movie that does it. Spielberg is catching so much heat because now he's the guy that does kid movies because of the massive success of E.T. that he and this is what I find interesting too. He says, well, let's make a rating that lets parents know that it's safe for kids of a certain age. Because, you know, there's the chest ripping scene, Golima, in Temple of Doom. And we start to get the PG-13 rating. And I think things really change with the PG-13 rating. That doesn't mean there's not good movies during that time, because Night of the Comet, one of my favorite horror movies to watch at Christmas.
Oh, no doubt.
That's a Christmas movie for me, Night of the Comet. But
I mean, do you think it was just the PG-13 rating being created, or do you think there's also an element of, you know, people are getting more and more freaked out about the idea of, you know, hidden Satanists amongst us?
well, let's look. We have to remember. I'm actually reading a really good book that I can't remember the name of because I bought it. I had to get it digitally. And I'm in the chapter right now where it's talking about Michelle Remembers. And there's a documentary coming out. I believe it's going to be on Tubi this winter called We Want Satan or something like that. I forget the name of it. But it talks a lot about Michelle Remembers. And that's the book where this woman, this doctor, she sees every day, a therapist every day. Unbeknownst to the public, they formed a relationship. And the doctor is telling her that she's got all these repressed memories that come out during their hypnosis sessions. This book is also very similar to another book that was way popular before this, which was Sybil. Also a similar situation where the doctor and the subject had a relationship. And Michelle Remembers, this woman is saying that she was sold as like a 5-year-old to a satanic cult.
Yeah, there's like scenes in it where she's getting back her repressed memories under hypnosis and claiming that she was levitating in the air by the demons and all.
Eating
it's a weird
feces, ritual sacrifices of animals and children and women, and she just was there for all of it. And then it was 14 months of being with the cult, and then like sold her back. And for quite some time, these people made the rounds on talk shows, and she told her story, her tale, first-hand account of satanic cults. And it's not soon after. I mean, there's also some bills that passed in the 70s as well. I think we talked a little bit about this on the Satanic Panic show, that there's a movement of second wave feminism that's like victims' rights. And not Walter Mondale. Who ran against Reagan the second time? Was it Walter Mondale?
I'm blanking.
No, Michael Dukakis.
Yeah, Dukakis,
had some legislation about victims' rights. And if you start going, you know, even further back, you know, we didn't really have anything for abused children, like CPS and all this stuff. That's relatively new when kids were getting abused. So a lot of these organizations getting more funding dollars, being bigger, kids getting left at home, movies like The Exorcist, Michelle Remembers being a massive.
And by the way, not just movies like The Exorcist, the fear of possession that we get from The Exorcist, but also, I mean, you mentioned Rosemary's Baby and tried to make the Manson connection. I think there were a lot of, I mean, even right after the Manson family murders, there were movies coming out about the Manson family immediately after, like really ridiculous exploitation movies. I think there's even one with Russ Meyer's favorite big boobed actress, Ushi Degard, where she plays a member of the Manson family, some 70s exploitation movie. And then you had the Jeffrey McDonald case, which was this, you know, highly lauded military, you know, guy. He was a doctor. And in the 70s, he's at this military base and his family's with him, and his family gets murdered one night. And he claims that it was a cult of evil satanic hippies that broke into his house. And famously, Earl Morris is obsessed with this case. This case is the reason we have the Innocence Project, actually. And there's a book and movie that come out by a journalist. I'm blanking on his name right now. It's that journalist that wrote the Rogue Leader book about Sarah Palin. Joe McInnes, I think was his name. But he does reporting on Jeffrey McDonald with a book called Fatal Vision eventually coming out. And, he basically is of the view that McDonald did it. And I am too. And there's one reason for it. McDonald has this elaborate story about these satanic hippies coming in. And one of the satanic hippie women was yelling, "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs, acid." And I'm like, that's so ridiculous. I just don't see this happening. But to this day, there are people like Earl Morris that just can't believe a respected man like Jeffrey McDonald would commit those murders. So it must have been some outside influence. Maybe it was this hippie cult.
See what happens when we smoke on air?
That's true. I need to stop. But anyways, what's really interesting is one of the people deeply involved in the Jeffrey McDonald case over the years is this former FBI agent known as Ted Gunderson, who worked out of LA. And Ted Gunderson is on all the Satanic Panic specials. I think he's on the Geraldo special. He's one of the main people that pushed all this Satanic Panic stuff, including the McMartin preschool case. If you talk to people that knew about the McMartin preschool case or were involved, people like he hates Ted Gunderson, this former FBI agent, because he would come in on all these different cases and be like, "Yep, it was witches on broomsticks. These evil Satanists, they're everywhere." There's a great episode of Disinfo TV, the Richard Metzger show from the 2000s, where they do a whole segment with Ted Gunderson, and he's claiming, "Look, there's a note on my windshield. Look, it has the symbol of the devil horns." But this dude went around grifting everywhere in the 80s, like pushing Satanic Panic stuff. This former FBI agent, he even sticks around for a long time and tries to get involved in the David Carradine case, and says, "Oh, it was actually a secret society and a cult of Thai trans hookers."
Whoa!
Yeah, that comes from Ted Gunderson, and Ted Gunderson really helps tie together the sort of fear of Manson family cults and the sort of devil aspect of it all.
Thai, as in the ethnicity Thai, the nationality Thai?
Yes.
Okay.
But he's always around for all of this. I forget when he passed away. He's a horrible right-wing ideologue.
Can you imagine, like, the guy walking onto the crime scene, like in those 80s movies? Right. Oh, no, here comes Ted. He's a loose candy.
Yeah. But it's
this is the work of Thai hookers.
Right.
It's like the scene in Point Break.
Yeah.
I know you think it's the surfers again. It's
well,
look at the feet prints.
Right. I mean, we joke about it, but what's scary is guys like this were on daytime TV scaring the crap out of parents.
Scaring the bejesus out of everyone's parent. And there's things that are kind of just coincidentally working all in concert with one another, right? So you have...
Well, you have the Manson family first, then you had movies like The Exorcist, and then it snowballs from there, is sort of what I was trying to get at.
And you also have a moral conservatism coming out of California that happens during the Manson 60s, right? Because Reagan becomes governor. And by the time he's president, there's a few things that are happening, in the zeitgeist of the youth. You have like a burgeoning hip hop scene and punk and metal scene, and all these scenes kind of shared the same iconography for a while, right? Spikes and chains and violence is how they're looked at, even though when you like listen to the music, they're just trying to have a good time, like pretty much all of it. And I think all those things work together. And then heavy metal to me goes over the top because it's all about demons and witches and elves and fairies.
Heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, we cannot forget Dungeons, because Dungeons and Dragons becomes hey, this is why the kid killed himself. I was reading before we started the show.
Yeah, I forget the name of that case, but I think it helped inspire that early
Tom
Tom
Hanks.
Hanks movie,
Tom Hanks
Bases
in
and
that movie.
Monsters.
That was his first starring role, I believe.
Not his only Satanic Panic movie, but we'll get to that later.
Oh, the one in the 80s, the Funhouse?
No, Tom Hanks.
The Burbs.
The Burbs,
Burbs.
which is a perfect movie up until the ending, where they like justify all the Karenisms in it.
We're going to talk about that. Let's talk about Trick or Treat. So Trick or Treat is a 1986 movie that is made for young Jason. It's starring Skippy Handelman. I don't know his real name. I think his real name is Mark Price. That doesn't matter. His name is Skippy Handelman. That was his character on Family Ties. He was the nerdy love interest of Justine Bateman. And in this movie, he's supposed to be a headbanger that's in love with a heavy metal guy named Sammy Kerr. Now, when I heard about how this movie came to be, JG, I laughed my ass off. Apparently, Dino De
Laurentiis, who
Dino De Laurentiis.
As soon as I saw his name on this movie, I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. I actually
he goes.
He did that. He did that 70s King Kong movie, which is underrated, and he also did our favorite Amityville movie, the best one, Amityville 2. You know,
who also has Diane Franklin in it.
Right.
Shout out to Diane. So he goes and sees Freddy Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. And he goes to two writers like, hey, I want you to write me a movie. I want a movie with a guy with a pumpkin on his head. He goes around killing people on Halloween. Call it Trick or Treat. Trick or Treat's a movie. I need it out by October 24th. Thank you. And then he walks away. And these guys are like, I don't know if we can write a movie about a slasher guy with a pumpkin on his head killing people. And then they kind of work in the moral panic, and they work in the music and all that other good stuff. And they get the movie. Everybody's happy with it. But apparently heavy metal singers that they wanted to play the lead role of the star Sammy Kerr didn't want to do it, because the two huge names in it, Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne, have very, very small roles in it.
Right. It's weird because Ozzy is credited as a special appearance, but it almost feels like he's in it more than the other guy, Gene Simmons from Kiss, because you see him at least twice in the movie. You only see Gene in that one scene, you know. And
Gene Simmons is actually a really good actor in the horror movies. If you want to see like good heavy metal acting, Gene Simmons as the hermaphrodite bad guy.
Never Too Young to Die.
Never Too Young to Die.
John Stamos. And Vanity.
Vanity, John Stamos as a young James Bond, and Gene Simmons as a hermaphrodite bad guy that's trying to poison the city's water. Ragnar. Never Too Young to Die. And Gene Simmons in Runaway.
Yeah, Runaway. Tom Selleck.
With Tom Selleck. Great in that movie. But the movie is about this kid gets a record from Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons says, hey, I know you're a big fan of this guy who happens to be from our town. And the singer.
And this guy just died. Sammy Kerr just passed away in a fire, you know.
He mysteriously dies, right? And so Skippy Handelman's character, Mark Price's character, gets the record. And I get this and the gate confused because I couldn't watch this, JG. It's not on any streaming services. They pulled it.
You know what's interesting, real quick, we should mention too. I don't know if I think Synapsis is coming out with it, but this is getting a 4K remaster.
I saw that. I saw it's getting a remaster, but so is that why they pulled it from all the streaming services?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of rights issues with it over the years because of the music in it.
Yeah, the music is done by a band called Fastway. I played a small clip of that movie because I felt like the intro to that movie is so cool because you see Mark Price's character's room and he's got the coolest posters in it. I was like, dude, I totally want that room. And I think we played it as a clip for a show, and YouTube pulled the whole video down for a 10-second clip of a Fastway song that's in the beginning of that. And Fastway singer later forms Flogging Molly.
Oh, really?
I did not know that. I found that out today. But the character gets this record, and I forget, JG, does the record just sound like it's backwards and he has to play it backwards to hear what it says? Is that this one? Or is
Yes.
that the gate? Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah,
he can't understand it at first. Then he plays it backwards, and he realizes it's Sammy Kerr
th-
communicating.
that right there made me laugh so hard because I couldn't remember if that was that or the gate because I remember those two movies do that. But to get the whole backwards messaging thing that wrong, the record itself is backwards, and he's got to like if you got a record from your favorite person and you put it on the player and it sounds like you'd be like, this is broken. Or you throw
That's
it
true.
away. I would not think, oh, I'm going to play it backwards and get the messages. And what's funny about that, not funny, but sad, around the same time, 1985, there's 3 big trials. And I think Judas Priest's trial ends in 90. But there's 3
Yeah, the
big,
Judas Priest trial is insane with the two.
the 2 young men committed suicide listening
They were
to,
like working at a gas station, right? And the parents were like, they killed themselves because they listened to Judas
they listened to
Priest.
Judas Priest.
Mask it. They wanted to kill everyone. Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne also. Ozzy Osbourne had 2 cases thrown at him for
I
suicide
didn't know
solution.
that. Wow.
Yes, he had 2 cases in 85. One was thrown out for the same thing, for his song Suicide Solution. And if you go back and watch Decline of a Western Civilization, the metal years, there's a whole section of the movie where they go to a place that, excuse me, quote unquote, demetals your kid, right? Because metal music is borderline pop music. It's selling tons of copies at this time. This is before even the PMSA is putting labels on stuff. And that imagery for albums like Shout at the Devil, Venom, it was like the first Motley Crue record, that Live Wire video with just the skull, like that's all I needed. It was like the skull. Was like, that is so cool. It's interesting to me that the fear is in the music. Like that's what's making our kids go astray. It's not the world around them. It's not the reality that the factory job that their dad had, that one income that could support a family of 4, buy a house, and we can go on vacations. Like it's not that is dwindling in front of them. College now costs money. It didn't when we went to school. It's that heavy metal music is what's doing it. I found that interesting because I think it was even worse than what you get with their parents and rock and roll. Like the key to juvenile delinquency is Elvis Presley's hips, right?
Right.
That was just going to get you a baby at 15, but Metallica is going to get you a one-way ticket to hell and maybe a prison sentence. And I don't think we talk about that enough when we talk about this moment. And also when you look at the character of even Marty McFly in Back to the Future, and I do find some similarities in these 2 characters because they're kind of kids that are going nowhere,
Right.
and there's really no opportunity for them. If
Right.
you go back and watch Back to the Future, there's really nothing for Marty McFly. His siblings all still live at home. His brother's working a fast food job, and his father is kind of a lackey, right? And my good friend Michael Harris has got a book coming out. Finally, his book is coming out. He talks about it in his upcoming book, but he says Back to the Future is all about protecting middle class security. Remember how horrible Hill Valley looks before he fixes everything. And when you think about Mark Price's character in this, he's not going anywhere. He's kind of a loser, school schmool. What are you gonna do with your life?
I mean, what always shocks me with this movie? I know it's like kind of funny now because it's so over the top, but the way he gets treated in the first act of the movie. No, I was like, I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can watch it. I get embarrassed for the main character, so much in that opening. I'm like, oh no, don't do that to him. Yeah, actually, I mean, that's what's weird about it. I mean, in a weird way, I guess it is one of those movies saying, oh, heavy metal is corrupting the kids.
Mm-hmm.
But like really the heart of his issues is that, I mean, he's just kind of a teenage outsider. And I mean, the people around him are just really mean to him, except for the one girl who we'll get into later, I guess.
The girl from Hellraiser.
No, I don't think. No, it's not. It's not.
That's not the daughter from Hellraiser?
No.
Dude, are you
Ashley
look,
Lawrence is not. Yeah, that's not Ashley.
someone
Lawrence.
double check this. Is the girl from Trick or Treat 1986 movie the same woman, the same young girl from Hellraiser? I say yes. JG says no. You guys tell us. There's someone in the chat that will tell us the truth.
I looked this up last night. It's Lisa Orgolini, who
I got a Lisa
she's in a
Orgolini
bunch
for
of
you.
movies after this, but she never has another like lead female role.
It's not the same person?
No,
I think you're making this up. Are you effing
I'm
with
not
me?
making it up. Ashley Lawrence isn't in it. She does look like her though,
Exactly like her. She even makes that same face when she's scared.
right?
Right? Oh.
I
well,
was reminded of Hellraiser while watching this actually because I remember the scene where they're running down the stairs, running away from Sammy Kerr.
yeah.
After he's been electrocuted or whatever. No spoilers. I won't go any further than that.
Look,
but
you know the rule. If it's over 3
over
months
40,
old,
yeah.
you're getting spoilers.
I remember when they're running down the stairs, it reminded me of when Ashley Lawrence runs down the stairs near the end of
I think
Hellraiser
it's
trying
the
to
same
escape the
person.
house.
It's gotta be the same person.
It's a doppelganger.
Is it like Humpty Hump and Shock G? You never saw them at the same place at the same time. Well, look, that the first act of that movie, you're right. It's almost 2 different movies.
Yeah.
And apparently, Dead Whiskey says no Hellraiser credit. Okay, JG, you win. I will accept defeat.
Real quick, what always gets me, by the way, in that first act, I mean, I know the swimming pool stuff where he gets pushed into the pool during the pool party. That's sort of what drives him over the edge. But for me, the worst is when they take his record and then throw it out into the gym where the girls are. And he's like buck naked trying to get back the record. And all the girls are like laughing at him, taking the picture. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cruel.
Some of those 80s movies are the cruelest things. Toxic Avenger. Like,
Yeah.
how do you think? Not even when they go hitting people for points. I'm talking about what they did to Melvin. Like, Jesus Christ. Revenge of the Nerds.
Right.
The cruelty in the minds of boomers is next level.
I think that's why so many people remember the movie, though. I think a lot of people that like Trick or Treat or remember it, and there's more and more people that remember it now. I think you really end up relating to Ragman. If you were ever an outsider growing up in any way, you're like, oh, I get him. And that's for me. That's actually why the movie works so well as a cult classic.
I think he was able to play that role really well because that's the role. It's very similar to the role that he played on Family Ties as Skippy Handelman, the kind of lovelorn neighbor that couldn't get with Mallory because she was with her own Ragman and Nick. Ayo, Mallory. And that's kind of what they wanted to do with the first half of the movie, and then they wanted the second half of the movie. The way they were able to sell it was, we're going to have a guy come back from the dead and hit people, kill people with guitar lasers. He's going to have lasers shoot out of his guitar.
Sammy Kerr.
And Laurentis was like, that sounds like a winner.
Right?
And so,
by the way, before we forget, I love how you said that I didn't know that no metal musicians wanted to play the Sammy Kerr character, the evil rock star.
Yeah.
They actually got a guy that isn't known for music at all. He's a dancing guy.
Yes, he's a dancer.
Yeah.
So what? Again, when you watch that movie again and you know he's a dancer, like, that's why he moves like that. Because there's no singer on the planet that is moving like that. He says one of the great things about that, they did a photo shoot, him, Ozzy, and Gene Simmons. And he said that Gene Simmons and Ozzy said, hey, your look is legit. Like, you pulled it off, the rock thing. And he was like so proud that they told him he was holding a guitar properly and everything. But the second half of that movie is supposed to be the kid letting the genie out of the bottle and trying to put it back in. And I think that's another reason why you feel bad for him, because the first part of it is the Sammy Kerr character, who he's kind of living through, is helping him confront these bullies. He's giving him the strength to confront these bullies. And apparently what they wanted to do was talk about hero worship and why it's problematic. And I was like, oh, I didn't really think about that. I mean, I definitely do my fair share of talking about hero worship and why it's
I think that really comes through with the scene with Gene Simmons, Nuke, the radio DJ.
Yeah.
Where he's like, he says to, Mark Price's character, Sammy wasn't a god. He was a very angry man. And, the kid is just like, no, I know Sammy. I've listened to all his records. In a weird way, it becomes a comment on, consumerism and parasocial relationships.
I mean, what is look, you and I talk about this stuff a bit on our shows. What is your take about the contemporary state of a left that comes out of mass consumerism? That's kind of just, it just is what we are.
I
and
mean,
hero worship.
I think it's really bad, but I also think it's kind of unavoidable. It's sort of the society we live in. We sort of unfortunately, we define ourselves by the things we consume, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's true. Like, I think we do that with the left too. Everyone has their sort of personality cults that they sort of follow, right? I don't know. I don't know if I have more to add to that right now. If you want to add more,
I find it interesting that I wrote this piece that people were not the biggest fans of about Cornel West, and it wasn't about Cornel West the man. It was more about kind of the hype around him,
the image, yeah,
around him running for office. And recently I was a guest on Ben Burgess's show, and our good friend Norm Finkelstein was on. And again, I'll preface by saying I am friends with Norm Finkelstein in real life. When I go to New York, I fucking see Norm and stuff like that. So he was kind of waxing a little too poetic of Cornell, and I had made a joke. He was like, Cornell goes on every show, no matter the size. And I was like, yeah, now. It's like he wasn't before. We got stiff-armed. And I won't get in too deep into the details, but we got stiff-armed when we were doing stuff for a bigger channel. And again, I don't think he's a bad dude. I hope it would be a wonderful world if he got to be president, right? Everything would be a little bit better. But just the hype and fanfare around him, it was like, well, this is a personality I can get behind. And I felt like, well, there's a lot of similarities between him and Trump in the sense of neither one of these people has ever held political office. And we're not talking about politics anymore. We're just talking about popularity. And those things don't always correlate. Like, they're very, very different. Like, the way things work and the way things run, and I was like, do we have to get this excited? And he was running this. I wrote it at the time when he was with that one party. I can't think of the name of the party. Is it the People's Party?
I think he started with the People's Party.
Yeah, I think it was the People's Party.
Green Party, right?
Yeah, now he's with the Green Party. So, again, I don't have anything against the man, but it was just that kind of fanfare around him that made me go like, what are we? Do we need heroes that bad? And when you watch a movie like Trick or Treat, I'm sure a lot of people that voted for Trump probably felt like Mark Price's character. Like, why can't we put the genie back in the bottle? And then you get January 6th. But did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's actually a really good point. I mean, we really do have a celebrity culture. I mean, I remember, Martin Sheen came to my college, the Catholic college I was at. I didn't get to meet him, but everyone was just talking about him like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, I like Martin Sheen, but if I were to meet Martin Sheen, I would just be like, thank you for your activism. Like
Yeah.
in a way, maybe it's because I've met so many actors over the years, but
Mhm.
to me, they're just like, they're people like the rest of us. And it's weird because most of them are appreciative I mean, the actors I've met are more appreciative of being treated that way than being treated like, some out of this world character, that's like worshipped by the masses. But, I think it becomes an issue when we get too caught up in, singular personalities, especially politically, because, one person alone does not build a village.
Do not tell that to people that told me to go fuck myself after I wrote that piece. No, not that many people told me to go. Enough. But I do think that's what makes Trick or Treat for me a very, very fun watch, because you see we've all had there's someone in our, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you are, there's someone in your life that when you would see them probably on TV or something, you got so excited. And when you see the look in Mark Price's eye when the Sammy Kerr character is doing that speech in front of Congress, they're redoing the PMRC trials. And well, actually, I think they did speak in front of Congress, didn't they? Didn't Frank Zappa speak in front of Congress? Not just the
Yeah.
PMRC?
I think Dee Snider may have too, right?
Yeah, Dee Snider definitely did as well. His claim to fame. He loves talking about that. And for a lot of people, they were like, yeah, you're going to stick it to the man. And they lost. Ultimately, the musicians lost what they didn't want. They didn't want the labels. You may hear some talk about in hindsight, like, oh, yeah, we always wanted it. No, everybody was afraid of it. That's why so many artists didn't want to get tarnished with being a Satanist, because, again, Ozzy got sued. Judas Priest thought they were over. And just to give you an idea of how expensive that trial was for them, their record label had to hire lawyers
Right.
and pay for them somewhere to stay. And they're what, 4 or 5 records in, playing arenas at this time? And they thought it was all going to be over that trial. There was a strong push from the Christian right, which was extremely powerful at the time.
Yeah, people like if people want to learn more about this, I mean, just Google Jesse Helms.
Whoo, very, very powerful at this time. And this was the menace. And the one piece of, I don't even want to say it was legislation, but the one thing they were able to make happen was the parental advisory sticker.
And also, we can't we can't leave her out.
Mhm.
People like Tipper Gore played a big role in all of this too.
Ooh, massive role. She is the face of the PMRC to this day. And she wasn't even the only senator's wife on it, but it was all senators' wives.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because Al becomes vice president, but her name was synonymous with censorship in the 80s. I think the Hook and Mouth and Megadeth mentions Tipper Gore. If they don't mention her name by name, they definitely mention the PMRC in the hook of that song, Hook and Mouth. Because people were so, in the metal community, they really felt the assault. And then in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, you get it in the hip hop community, because by the time Two Live Crew comes out, they're like, this is too much. Every song is just, it's just dick, 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 dick. It's too many dicks. Like, what is Tipper Gore saying now about Sexy Red?
I think that's a really important point to drive home, because we can watch a movie like Trick or Treat now, and it's sort of fun and enjoyable. But like, I do think there's a serious issue with moral panics like the Satanic Panic. I mentioned Anton LaVey earlier. One of the things I find interesting about LaVey and not very laudable about him is that LaVey really played into this image, and he liked, being the center of attention. But when the Satanic Panic happened, he wasn't really there to fend off, all the sensational reporting on it, right? He actually left that to people like his daughter, Zena LaVey, and also the aforementioned, I mentioned him earlier, Michael Aquino. And, I'm not really big fans of people from the sort of Church of Satan, Temple of Set subculture, because if you really look at their politics, a lot of the times,
Mhm.
what's interesting is a lot of them are very far right ideologically. And in a way, I think the Satanic Panic ends up diverting our attention away from that kind of. That's the real problem, I think, with Satanism is, I mean, most people who define themselves as Satanists have like close to or actually fascist politics.
Mhm.
People like Aquino in particular. Um, but there really were people that suffered because of the Satanic Panic. I mean, if you were a kid that was into like Wicca or something, even in the 90s, you know,
The West
if
Memphis
you were in
3.
the Bible Belt, yeah,
Yeah.
West Memphis 3, I mean, a lot of people suffered for it. And people like LaVey weren't there to really put a stop to it. They didn't fight back. You know, LaVey was like, I'm happy with the image I got. You know, I'm happy with the
Yeah.
attention I get. You know, I ain't
Which is
fighting this fight for these people.
which is really sad because then that music, I mean, and when the West Memphis 3 get caught up, it's like what, 94, 95?
Right.
Maybe even a little after that. We think that stuff is over, but there's still the imagery from the music for some people. Even though the music they were listening to, which I think is funny, wasn't even really all that Satanist bad. Like Marilyn Manson, I don't think ever really talks about the devil.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what's interesting is it kind of continues into the 90s. People forget about that. You know,
Mhm.
because you had these televangelist preacher types like Bob Larson, who had a really famous radio show. He's now known as like the television exorcist. He had a whole show on sci-fi. But in the 90s, Bob Larson just sold this stuff. He would be interviewing Satanists and he's like, look how evil all of this is. You know, and even metal musicians would call into his show. Famously, the guy from Deicide would
Okay,
call in and
Glenn
pretend to be
Tipton, yeah.
possessed by a demon. And I mean, it's all funny stuff. You can make fun of all of it, right? But
Mhm.
like some of this, you know, evangelical grifting did have real consequences for real people, you know, which is I mean, that's the scary aspect of it all. It's sort of like what I tell people, you know, I've always been a fan of like trash talk show TV,
Oh,
you know, so stuff
preaching to
like
the choir.
Wally George,
Yep.
and even Morton Downey Jr. But I think
Oh,
you
yeah.
may have pointed this out to me before. There
Mhm.
is like a really dangerous aspect to stuff like Morton Downey Jr.
Morton
and
Downey Jr. is so far right. He's so far right. And these are the things that we never ask ourselves. How does this man that is that far to the right, how is he able to have such an audience filled with young people? It's because if you're anti-government, people will listen. There's a reason why so many hippies got on the right-wing train in the 80s. As these people move out to the suburbs, they're now commuting to work, to the office, and they listen to the news radio. No, news radio didn't come on back then and say the best right-wing conservative talk, fuck your liberal parents radio. That's not how that shit came on. It was just news radio. And when you heard those voices that were so anti the establishment, i.e., Rush Limbaugh, that sounds like the rebel rousers that you heard back in the day.
yeah, no doubt. And some of these people actually kind of had careers in Hollywood. You know, I mean,
Mhm.
Wally George is in one of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, I believe the
Mhm.
fourth one. And Morton Downey Jr. did a number of movies. I mean, I
He was
think
in Tales from the Crypt. He's in the whole
yeah,
episode of Tales from the
he's in
Crypt
one of the
as
best
him.
episodes of Tales from
Yeah.
the Crypt. You know, where he makes fun of his own persona. He's in Predator 2 as that
Oh, I
evil
forgot
journalist
about
Tony
that. Yeah.
Pope, who Danny Glover is like, screw you, boom, punches him. You know, and it's weird because I've always taken Downey Jr. as someone who was kind of like a self-conscious con man. He's like playing a character. But I mean, what he created was very bad. You know, because
And
I
you
don't
know
think we
who he
get the
grew
Bill
up with?
O'Reillys and the Limbaughs.
You know
Yeah.
who he grew up with, right? The
No.
Kennedys.
Oh, really? Huh.
Morton Downey is the son of a famous singer.
I know that. Yeah.
And he tried his hand in singing and he wasn't as good as his dad, but he was very good friends with the Kennedys.
Hmm.
And like that's who he spent summers with. Those were his homies. He was a Democrat. And I forget how he makes the political turn. And his show, he's almost somewhat apolitical on his show. He doesn't really say he's a Democrat or a Republican. Again, if you watch the show, and there's a handful of episodes you can find online, there's Republican political figures that come on the show, and he is to the right of these people because it's all about conservative moralism. And some of these people that worked in Republican government weren't necessarily moralists. Not everybody. And when Downey comes in, he's like, "No, dude, this is a moral issue, and you're part of the man." And you hear everybody just cheering along, and it's insane when you think about it. You know how far right everyone listening to him was, kind of how far right we were as a country.
No, I was going to say in that regard, I mean, people forget some of the people who promoted the Satanic Panic, you wouldn't associate them with it if you didn't know about the whole history. You know, everyone on daytime talk shows was talking about this, including Oprah. Oprah was a big supporter of this.
Oprah
I mean,
had what's the book we just mentioned? I just forgot the name. Michelle remembers.
Michelle remembers. Yeah, she also had
people on the show.
Yeah, she even had a dude by the name of a guy who went by the name of Doc Marquis, and Doc Marquis is sort of this John Todd character. So there's all these figures in the 70s and 80s that come out saying, I was a part of the Illuminati and the satanic witch cabals that run the earth. And these people like him got exposure on Oprah, you know?
They were experts.
Right.
These people were coming on as experts. Yeah. And you know, Oprah, really, tell me more. That's how insane. Like when you look at the transcripts I was reading again before we got to the show, I was reading some of the court paperwork. I meant to send this to you for one of the Ozzy cases that he had. And they start mentioning the lyrics of the song. And you go, how can you even think someone could hear that and be like, you know what I need to do? I need to shoot my brains out.
Right.
And even the Judas Priest thing, I think the most common clip you might see if you watch, if you don't want to watch the whole trial, I think it lasted a couple months, the Do It thing. There's other things that they claim that Judas Priest says in this record. And when you look at the band, they just look shell-shocked. Because they're like...
It's such a weird thing, right? Because you're like, why would this band, who is getting all the groupies in the world, they're getting all the sex in the world, making tons of money... But you're telling me they want to kill their entire audience. They're going to kill the golden goose.
I mean...
But I guess that's part of the satanic conspiracy.
If you're a Satanist... Judas Priest, rock and rolla Judas Priest looks like broke pimps. Stained class Judas Priest. British steel Judas Priest are leather boys in San Francisco, right? They're Folsom Street leather boys by the time you get to British steel Judas Priest. But that's not what people think of when they think of that imagery. They think, oh, these guys are evil and satanic. Ronnie James Dio was never in these trials, and his album covers were kind of the most awesome in the world when it comes to like scary demon album covers. And it's like fascinating to me to think that we went that far right kind of as a country. And there's a lot of things going on, right? You got this deindustrialization, you got jobs moving overseas, poverty is growing, crime, there's violence everywhere, and the solution is just lock people up. And here we are 40 some years later, and I just watched a press conference that was done in Oakland because there's so many car break-ins, and there's a fair amount of car break-ins in the San Francisco Bay Area, because San Francisco per capita is the #1 place for car break-ins in the country. And they just arrested a bunch of people that were part of a car theft ring. This press conference wouldn't have happened 3 years ago, right? And now we're applauding the police doing their job. Did we ever move to the left, JG?
I mean, if you ask me, I don't think we did.
Is it just a figment of my imagination? And this press conference was shared, on a black network, or former black network from Oakland.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were like, hey, and it was like a right on thing. It wasn't like, oh no, they're overstepping the bounds. It was like, no, right on, right on. So I find all these things fascinating, these moral panics, and you got into it deeper with these moral panics. This is not just movies like Trick or Treat. You actually pointed to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, as a response to a moral panic around homosexuality.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean it's weird because people will say I never thought of that when watching the movie, and I didn't think of it when I saw it when I was younger. But you watch it now, it's like the gym coach in it literally goes to a gay S&M bar in the movie. Uh,
Yes.
I mean, and
He
just
dies with balls. He
yeah.
gets
Well,
killed with
there's also
balls.
that scene where you know the main kid, Mark Patton's character,
Mhm.
is alone in the room with the other. I guess they're baseball players, right? They're on a baseball team together. I
No,
think.
they're just high school.
Yeah, but yeah,
I
yeah,
think that was just
but
PE. Yeah, they're just playing PE.
yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. But he's with his other friend or frenemy
Yeah.
from that class, and his friend is like, "Why are you with me when you could be with the girl of your dreams?" You know, like the homosexual subtext is obviously there, and the whole ending of the movie is basically, "Oh, a good woman saves him." I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going on there. You know,
I never thought of that. A good woman saves him. There's a scene in that movie. Me and Ben rewatched it. Me and Ben Burgess rewatched it here at my house, and we died like there was tears coming out of our eyes laughing. There's a scene where he's about to have sex with his girlfriend, and he goes, and I think he yells. I think his friend's name is like Grady or something. He's like, I gotta go see Grady. Like he's
yeah,
right
it's
about that.
Grady. Yeah.
And he runs out of the room. And the whole thing is the girl wants to have sex with him in the movie, and he just can't do it with her.
Right.
And so he runs away. And Grady, of course, that's the scene where Grady dies. And you know, it's just these two sweaty men in a bedroom. And me and Ben just cracked the hell up. Because again, when you're not looking for the subtext, the writer who is gay did not know Mike
The
Patton.
actor.
The writer was also gay.
Oh, because I know there was a documentary about this
Yeah.
a few years ago called Scream
Queens. Yeah.
Okay, and I know that Mark Patton, the
Patton,
actor, for years has been very upset that the writer would never admit that it was about homosexuality.
He wasn't out yet. And
Okay.
the guy that plays his father that passed away not too long ago also was gay. He passed away.
Clu Gallagher?
Yep.
I mean, Clu has a kid.
And
That's true. That's a good point.
He's old school Hollywood where you had to hide that
true.
shit. In the documentary for Nightmare on Elm Street, he makes fun of, you know, all the things that he wished that they would have done with the gay part.
Okay.
It's fun. It's hilarious. He's hilarious. I didn't peep the whole a good woman saves him. And I wouldn't have thought that was a kind of response to the moral panic of homosexuality and
Right.
AIDS. You know, we can't talk about the 80s and the moral panics of homosexuality without talking about the moral panic of AIDS as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few movies that deal with that. There was another movie, I think it's called The Sender, which is I mean, it's very much an AIDS allegory with it, you know, a dude gets a disease and it's, you know, I mean, there was moral panics about that. Going into the 90s, you had horror movies playing off the fear of video games. I don't know if you've ever seen Brain Scan with Edward Furlong.
No, but I've seen Evil Speak.
No, Evil Speak is another one. I love Evil Speak with Clint Howard in that's the connection between computers and Satanism, which what the hell? You know? But Brain Scan was a movie where Edward Furlong, sort of like this Ragman character, plays a kid who's obsessed with violent horror movie games, you know, horror games. And he gets this one horror game and he unleashes an evil guy, I think called the Trickster, you know, who's sort of, they wanted this to be like the new Freddy Krueger character. But the whole movie is sort of like, it's almost like a remake of Trick or Treat, where, you know, he has to, you know, stop this evil character he's unleashed from the video game world, you know. It's just interesting because, I mean, horror movies tend towards, I mean, it's easy, right? It's easy to make a movie that plays on the moral fears of the time. And that's why a lot of horror movies can end up being, you know, I mean, in their own way, very conservative.
I think it's a cash in. I don't think they're trying to necessarily tell over the top messages sometimes.
No. I don't think it's. I mean, having talked to a lot of people in Hollywood, it's all about how can we make that money.
Like those movies that tried to cash in on the Satanic Panic, they're hilarious because they're just so all over the place. And I did watch Black Roses before we went on air.
Mhm.
That is a great, horribly bad movie.
I need to see Black Roses. I have a
Oh
copy
my
of it somewhere.
god, it's because they all, you can tell none of them know jack about the music, which is funny because this is popular music at the time. It's selling millions of copies and it's all over MTV. But the people that are making these movies have no idea. I guess it's kind of like, you know, the one hip hop movie that I showed on this channel, Fly By Night, where you watch Fly By Night, you're like, no one that's ever listened to a rap song had anything to do with this movie, or known black people has had anything to do with this movie because it's so offensive. It's like
I was gonna.
go ahead.
I was going to say another movie that comes to mind when it comes to moral panics. I mean, concurrent with the Satanic Panic was the Panic over the New Age. You know, you had these weird characters like Constance Cumby writing about the dangers of the New Age, and Maitreya, and you know that goes from like the 70s into the 80s and 90s even. But there's a movie called Bad Dreams with Jennifer Rubin from Nightmare on Elm
Another
Street 3,
movie
Taryn from
you
Nightmare on Elm
can't
Street 3.
find. You can't find it streaming. Bad
Oh,
Dreams.
really?
Dude, me and Ben, I said, Ben, there's this movie. I saw it one time and I vaguely remember it, but it's a Nightmare on Elm Street clone. And there's a guy that does these really good YouTube videos where he talks about knockoffs of different things. And he did a whole 45-minute video on Nightmare on Elm Street knockoffs. And Ben was writing an article at my house and I was watching it and he goes, hey, this is really interesting. And he's like, what was that movie again? That looks really good. We should check that out. So we looked for it, couldn't find it. He went and found it at a video store. And he goes, I have this DVD player. It's like, all right, great. And the only thing he could find was a Blu-ray. We put the thing in and he lost the remote to the DVD player and we couldn't play it. We couldn't play it. We could not play it without the remote. So I still have Bad Dreams sitting here in its Blu-ray box and I can't play it. So if anyone in Southern California has a Blu-ray player, let's watch Bad Dreams. I will drive up to SoCal because I have to see this movie. It's been so long and I can't, it's not on any streaming service. Let's make it happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me because that's the movie that plays with the whole is the cult in that movie, led by the great Richard Lynch, who was just an amazing character actor. I mean, they're basically like a Jonestown-esque cult. You know? So it played into moral panics about, you know, the New Age. It's a gateway into the world of evil. You know, another one like that is, we were talking about it before we got on the show, was the Robert Englund directed 976 Evil, which I actually double featured that with Trick or Treat. I watched Trick or Treat and immediately after I'm like, I'm going to watch 976.
Because you have the physical copies?
Yeah.
You would be that fucking guy that kept his.
I am. I'm such a nerd.
No, I wouldn't call you a nerd. I'm just like, you're the smart guy that didn't lose everything and had to fucking sell all his DVDs. That's the opposite of a nerd. You're winning at life.
But when I was watching that movie, I was struck by, it was sort of playing on fears about astrology, you know? And also, that's 976 Evil is an interesting movie since we mentioned gay panic stuff. The main actor in that movie, Stephen Jeffries, who was also in Fright Night, ends up, I mean, he's gay. He became a gay porn star after
Word
ended. Yeah. But, you know, it's really interesting. There's a lot of moral panics that are arising at in the 80s. I mean, even I mentioned Fright Night. I mean, there's weird gay subtext to Fright Night, too.
There is, yes.
Stephen Jeffries' character in that, much like 976 Evil, is sort of this outsider, and you do get the impression you're like, this kid may be gay, you know, and the evil forces take advantage of him in both movies. So, I mean, I think this comes up in a lot of the Satanic Panic movies of the, you know, 80s and even in the early 90s, you know, which is really interesting. There was one movie I really wanted to mention in regards to Satanic Panic that I think is really interesting. It's not necessarily a movie you watch because it's not campy, really. It's
Mhm.
just it's kind of really grim and gritty and almost grindhousey. But
Mhm.
there's this movie called Midnight from 1982, and it's John Russo made it. And John Russo fascinates me. He helped produce the original Night of the Living Dead. He's not as well known as
Mhm.
George A. Romero, but Russo had a whole career making regional horror movies in in um, in Pennsylvania, where he's from.
Mhm.
And all of his movies are so mean spirited. And I don't know, for some reason, I just enjoy a good mean spirited horror movie.
Uh-huh.
Um, but he makes a movie called Midnight, and it's basically a cross between Satanic Panic and cannibalism. So it's a satanic cannibal cult. And it is the most, I mean, it's a grim movie. Lawrence Turney, the great film noir actor, is in it.
Yeah.
Uh, and he plays the hero.
Is
And
it in streams on streaming services, or you don't
I
know?
don't know if it's on streaming. It may be. I mean, I'm sure you could find it on YouTube. But this movie is so mean spirited that Lawrence Turney, who most people know him from, he's in Pulp Fiction, or not Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. He's the old guy, um, and also Seinfeld. But he plays the hero, and the hero of this movie has to save his daughter, who
Mhm.
ran away from home after he got handsy with her. So he's literally this jerk that got handsy with his daughter, but he's the hero of the movie. I mean, that's how bizarre this movie is. But it's an interesting movie because it combines satanic panic tropes,
Mhm.
Satanist cults everywhere, with fear of backwoods America, which I think there's a political aspect to the fear of backwoods America that we get in the Texas Chainsaw movies. So there's all like weird social cultural aspects to all these movies and what they reflect about the climate politically and culturally.
I do have to read this super chat from Joe. Universal Remote Fool, make it a Friday movie night for this spooky season.
Indeed.
Um, First of all, the DVD player's gone now because Ben moved. He's in Southern California,
It's
and
unfortunate.
that he moved. Yes, because now I don't have any friends anymore. I'm just kidding. I have friends here in Mexico, but yeah, we should make it a movie night. I might have to mail it to Jeremy,
Mhm.
but I would ask Jeremy if we can make it a movie night. I want to do as many spooky movie nights this month as possible. M Toussaint is working on booking out an entire spooky. She called it spooky season, and she's been confirming shows left and right. So there's going to be some really interesting shows coming up. Um, that being said, is that movie Italian? Midnight? Someone says it sounds Italian.
No, Midnight is. I mean, it was a regional Pennsylvanian movie. So John Russo, that like I said, Night of the Living Dead, he made all these movies, horror movies in
Mhm.
Pennsylvania. He also helped write. He was the guy that wrote the novel that eventually became Return of the Living Dead. But the movie is very different from the
Is he the
novel.
one that had the rights to it and made that Return of the Living Dead
Yeah,
movie?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
He
okay.
he helped produce the original Night of the Living Dead, but
And
he
then he
continues
made.
his career making these movies like Midnight. In the
Mhm.
90s, he made a movie called Santa Claus, Claws,
I know it.
which is also a mean spirited, very low budget movie that begins with like a kid seeing his parents having sex and then like getting
Yep.
murdered or murdering them.
Yep.
Like he's just his
I,
movies are extremely grim.
I know Santa
Um,
Claus.
but Midnight to me is just interesting because I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts on this, just that weird fear of I mean, even I have it when I'm on the back roads in Florida here where I'm at right now.
Mhm.
That fear of like, oh, rural America gets played on in Midnight. So it's just interesting how all of these different movies play off the fears of the time.
The
You know,
best movie about those fears, in my opinion, is Tucker and Dale meets Evil.
I
Versus
love Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Yeah.
Tucker and Dale versus Evil to me is a lot of the South in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And I think I've told this story before, maybe in the champagne room. And someone please stop me in the comments if you've heard this before. But on tour in a long time ago, I can't remember the year, we were at a truck stop in North Carolina, and this guy looks over at me and my ex. It was a group with my ex, it was just us two, and he goes, "Y'all a band?" We're like, "Yeah." And we just started talking after that, and he was asking where we were playing and stuff like that, and we told him, and we happened to be playing somewhere near where he lived. and we're playing in a place called Carrollton, Georgia. And we had just heard that it was outside of Atlanta. And to me, outside of Atlanta means that you're just, you could see the city. You're like a hop, skip, and a jump from the city. And I didn't really understand outside of Atlanta could be an entirely different world of like coloreds only restrooms, right? And so we talked to the guy and he goes, I'm gonna try to see y'all when you get to town. And so it was like, we'll be there next week. So we told him the date. I think we even like exchanged numbers or something. And he looked like every fear you have of the rural South, of just rural America. He's a tall white man with a dirty trucker hat, a very thick drawl. He looked like he could be a part of Henry the serial killer's serial killer team, right? And we drive. This is back before we had a map. So we would take the directions that like whatever navigation app we were using at the time would give us. And those things take you down like a lot of state routes. State routes in certain places are frightening. And we went to a town either called Whitesville or Whitesburg. And my ex is from Canada. So there's certain things about American racism that just didn't compute with her. And she is a person of color as well. So we saw a bunch of antique shops going down this state route. And she was like, let's go to the antique shop. And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, oh, let's just go. Look at all these antique shops. So we get out of the car. We stop the car. JG, I'm not even trying to be funny. People in the stores start walking out and looking at us. And she doesn't think anything of it until we walk into a store and it's just like you hear the record skip like, "Rrr." And so she's like, oh, I think we should get back to the car. And so as we're going back to the car, more people start walking out and they're looking to see like where we're going, right? They're just looking, and we're getting scared. And the car feels like it's like 12 miles away. It's just a block away. But it's, it's one of those state routes where there's no sidewalks. You're trying to get down a dirt road as fast as possible. Then all of a sudden, because we're not looking back. We know if we look back, we're going to die. It's like, if you look back, you're going to get shot, right? And we right before we get to the car, and it's like a scene in the movie, like John Cusack and Better Off Dead, fiddling with your car keys, trying to get them. We hear a car pull up and go, there they go, right there. I dropped the keys because I thought, like, oh, I'm about to get shot. And it was the guy. It was the guy that we had met a week before. He drives up, pulls up in front of us, gets out of his car, gives us the biggest hug, and he starts yelling to his friend, I told you I knew a band. I told you this is the band right here. True.
Yeah, I mean, I've had weird experiences like that too, where I've been out in rural Pennsylvania camping with friends and stuff, and it's like you go into a shop in a very, very rural area, and you feel like everyone's looking at you, and then you talk to them, and you're like, oh, maybe I had misconceptions. That's why it's funny with rural horror. A lot of it really starts not just with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but the 1972 John Borman thriller Deliverance. But Deliverance is really interesting, right? Because in a weird way, that movie is more nuanced about the whole rural America thing. Is throughout the beginning and middle section of the movie, you're like, wow, these rural rednecks, they're like terrorists, hillbilly terrorists. But really, in the third act, it's these rural people that help nurse John Voight and his crew of characters, back to life, and they're helpful to him. They're actually portrayed in the third act as like decent people, just like us.
Just like us, yeah.
You're right. They're not different. But it's weird because that's like the first movie that starts the whole what's been called the hillbilly terrorist subgenre, right? But it's more nuanced. Like there are these bad characters that are kind of rural, but there's also good ones. Where I think in later iterations of that trope, no, they're just all bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, do not go to the backwoods. And we even have movies to this day like that. Like, they just made a remake of Wrong Turn. Somehow
Jesus.
there is 6, 7 Wrong Turn movies. I don't know how. Because the first 2 are okay, but like after that, it's why?
Yeah.
But like, oh, if you go to West Virginia, you're going to meet deformed cannibals. Like that trope is so popular. And it's just weird. You went from something relatively nuanced like Deliverance that is nuanced about rural America to stuff like Wrong Turn and what we have today.
I mean, we can't lie and act like these things aren't kind of embedded in our psyche. Like,
Right.
there's something that people always bring up on the show, and I think it's pretty funny. We had, I won't say her name. We had a popular at the time left person talking about organizing, and my co-host said they're talking about organizing in black people, black areas, and he goes, "Why don't you just go to black churches?" And the backpedaling. So because you assume what you think it is, right? Well, this is going to be a place of closed-minded people, and they're going to hate me because of my this, that, and the other. It's like, you don't know that because you've never been. West Virginia is filled. Have you ever been to West Virginia? What do I want to go to West Virginia for? It's like, I don't know. I had a lot of fun there. One of these pictures is from West Virginia, behind me. Playing shows there over the years. There's definitely some parts of it that are uncomfortable, but that's everywhere in the world. There's parts of where I'm from that are uncomfortable. But do movies like Red State make it worse? You said yeah.
I don't know. Red State's really interesting to me.
I like Red State.
I like Red State a lot. That's actually Red State was largely inspired in a lot of ways or influenced by a 1970s Satan cult movie called Race with the Devil, starring the great Peter Fonda and Warren Oates, who, if people don't know Warren Oates, he's been in a bunch of Sam Peckinpah movies. But back to the Satanic cult thing, an interesting movie that influences Kevin Smith doing Red State. Red State was interesting to me because at the end, you sort of have John Goodman being like, well, no one had to die in all of this. And I sort of found I found myself nodding my head to him. Like he still had some level of empathy, whereas, his superiors were like, nah, screw them. They're just rural rednecks,
Oh, I think that's the best piece of film Kevin Smith has ever written is John Goodman's end thing about people do crazy things when they just believe.
Yeah. And I do think, I thought, I knew it was going to be kind of riffing on Waco, but I think it was a little bit more nuanced than I thought it would be. The Waco's, you end up feeling bad for some of the family members because, like, they're clearly being brainwashed by the Michael Parks character.
Who is brilliant in that movie.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
Brilliant in that movie. Michael Parks, I didn't realize until I rewatched it for the 112th time, is the bad guy in Death Wish 5.
Yeah.
But if you haven't seen Red State, it's a great movie. I wouldn't mind doing Red State for movie night. I think that's a great horror movie. The twists and turns that movie takes that you don't see coming. And who's the bad guy?
Right.
That's what makes that movie frightening. When you are the victim, but now you're the bad guy, blew me away.
Right.
But does it prey on certain fears we have about religion? Definitely about the South. I think we've done several shows about religion on this channel, and there's always some pushback some people have about religion.
Right.
They definitely have. I don't know where everybody comes from that listens to this show, and if you've come from a repressive religious household, I can totally understand why you would hate organized religion.
I was going to say, I think that's just what horror movies do generally. I mean, there's a great essay by Stephen King where he opens the essay saying, at best, horror is conservative. At worst, it's just almost inherently reactionary. There's not a lot of room for nuance in a horror movie. There's it's black and white. There's the good self, and then there's the other, the scary big other. that we
Mhm.
have to be afraid of. And I do think that lends itself to a sort of, I guess, conservative or reactionary politics. I'm not saying horror movies are like, we should be afraid to watch horror movies or against horror movies, because there's a sort of reactionary currents in a lot of horror. I'm just saying, it plays off the often reactionary social fears of a given zeitgeist.
Ooh, that sounded smart. Look, I love horror movies, and sometimes you can read some things into horror movies. I know Kevin Smith also, and someone said in the comments, definitely made that movie as a reaction to when he found out about the Westboro Baptist Church, because they're definitely a big part of it, right? But it also talks about kind of how powerful some of these churches are in these rural communities. And actually, in any community, a church can be extremely powerful. I don't know how powerful Westboro is in Kansas. Again, there's parts of this country that I don't need to see again.
No,
Scare the shit out of me.
110%.
Yeah. But look, I've kept you for well over an hour, and I know it's later where you are in the country. I won't give out where your position is, so you don't get mobbed. Give me your favorite Satanic Panic horror movies in no particular order.
Trick or Treat is up there.
Mm-hmm.
If we're going with newer ones,
Mm-hmm.
one that I'm really, really into is it's almost filmed to look like a TV movie, but maybe more violent, from the 80s, and it has that very 70s, 80s feel, is House of the Devil, starring Warhol Girl, Mary Warrenoff, and the great Tom Noonan.
Love that movie.
Oh, yeah. It's a great movie. And it's directed by Ty West, who...
Was that the first one? Was that the first one of Ty West's little, I'm going to make the movies look like 80s movies? Was it House of the Devil the first one?
I don't know if that was the first one. I mean, it's weird to me because everyone is all up on Ty West now. Everyone loves Ty West now because of X and Pearl. But I remember I was into Ty West going back to The Roost, the vampire bat movie he did in like 2001, House of the Devil. One of my favorites of his is The Sacrament, which is it's literally a retelling of Jonestown, but with Vice magazine in it.
Ooh. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They literally play the audio.
Yeah.
They literally have the audio from the Jonestown massacre. Sacrament.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Ty West is an incredible filmmaker. I'm surprised it took so long for him to get recognition with X and Pearl. He also did a really great Western with Ethan Hawke. I forget the name of it. I think it's called In the Valley of Violence.
Did Ty West make that movie? And I think it's called Revenge.
Which one?
I think it's called Revenge. I think it came out like 2018, 2019.
I don't know. Was it what was it about?
A woman goes.
I know the one you're talking about. I don't think he did that one.
I also was a woman, and he already. You know what I'm talking about? Is it called Revenge?
Yeah.
He didn't do that?
No.
Who did that movie?
That's a good question. I actually haven't seen that movie. I keep getting recommended it.
Woo. That movie is like, woof. It's brutal to watch, but it's good. I swear Ty West did that because it just has that. I guess someone bit his style.
Yeah. He also did. I mean, I'm not a big fan of this series, but he did the second Cabin Fever movie, which is like, it's basically a better version of what Eli Roth did. No, I mean, I'm not joking. It's like if you were to watch a John Waters movie, but it's Cabin Fever. I mean, he hates that movie and wanted his name taken off of it because apparently the studio interfered with it. But I mean, I enjoy it. I mean, it's only like 79 minutes long. That's how much was cut out of it. But Ty West is just very underrated. And House of the Devil is actually probably one of my favorites. It may even be above X, to be honest. I still have to watch Pearl. You know what I just watched recently? And I don't know if we could call it Satanic Panic movie because it's like post-Satanic Panic. But I recently finally got around to watching Jennifer's Body, the Diablo Cody written movie with Megan Fox.
Yeah.
And Amanda Seyfried. And I actually really enjoyed it. was like, oh, it's an anti-emo band movie. The emo band is evil in it. I was not an emo kid growing up.
I don't believe you. I'm looking at you right now. Your bangs just wanted to swoop to the side.
Oh God, I do have that look. Don't I?
Since you are in Florida, I don't know if you saw. This is a extreme side note. There's a basketball player, Jimmy Butler, that went to the press day with his hair pressed in an emo style with a eyebrow and lip ring. And so the first thing the press said is, what is this? And he said, this is my emo face.
That's great.
I never laughed that hard in my life watching this fool. And so now there's all these emo nicknames for him, like Ball Out Boy. There was a whole list of emo nicknames for Jimmy Butler. I need to find it. It was rather hilarious.
I was going to mention another movie. Have you ever seen Witchboard?
Hell yeah.
Witchboard is great. I don't know if you call that satanic pen. I mean, it's about Ouija, evil Ouija board stuff.
The guy that says Ouija in it all the time that was in the soap operas.
Right. Yeah.
I love him. And that woman I think he died. Tawny Katane sadly passed away. Who else passed away from that movie?
I mean, there's a lot of people.
I think the actual guy that gets decapitated actually passed away.
Right.
There's not too many people left from that film. Yeah, Witchboard. Go watch Witchboard. I would throw Witchboard in there with the Satanic Panic movie.
Right.
I would definitely throw The Burbs.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the guy that did Witchboard also did another one. I don't know if you call I would call it Satanic Panic. Night of the Demons. You know,
I made a friend watch Night of the Demons yesterday because I found it on YouTube.
Did he see it for the first time?
It was she. Yeah, it was her first time seeing it, and I got all these messages telling me to go F off and they're never going to listen to me again. Because I guess YouTube blurbs out boobs.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Yo, you can't have that. The lipstick scene.
She was just
That's
mad.
one of the greatest gags of all time. But go on.
I thought that's a fun movie. I was like, it's a fun movie. She was like, this is stupid. Like, don't ever do this to me again.
Right. Well, the sequels are even more crazy.
I haven't watched the sequels because I'm scared too.
So it's funny. Night of the Demons 2 is actually a really good one from Brian Trenchard Smith, but it's done as like a full-on comedy at that point. I mean, there's like nuns fighting the demons with like super soakers filled with holy water and crucifix nunchucks. Also, Morbid Angel. You know, Angela, the what's her name? Amelia Kincaid, who plays Angela, the main demon girl in it. She has the sexiest dance scene ever. It's better than the one with Bauhaus in the first one. She dances to Morbid Angel.
Okay, I have to see the second one then, just because you said
And the third one is really weird because it comes out in like 96, 97, 98, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire like cast and crew, or most of it, are the same people who worked on Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? Because it's a Canadian movie. And it's the weirdest thing because you're like, this is like Night of the Demons if it was a Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark episode.
Is
even
that good?
Stylistically.
Is that good though? That might actually.
I mean, I enjoy it. I like it for what it is, but it's just completely different. And also, all three of those movies are getting like 4K remastered Blu-rays
in a box set.
Yeah.
So
Night of the Demons will be the first time that it's on Blu-ray. Night of the Demons 3 will be the first time it's on Blu-ray. So
I think that's
coming out this month. Yeah.
For me, this era gives us a lot of fun cinema. Like I said, Trick or Treat, The Gate. There's another one we said besides Black Roses, which is that.
Oh, I'm blanking.
Rock and Roll
Nightmare.
Rock and Roll Nightmare, worst movie of all time.
Right.
But watch.
Dude, I've seen movies that are worse. Trust me.
Really? Like, that's one of those movies. Because Rock and Roll Nightmare, if I'm not mistaken, is the one where the guy, like the singer of this band that isn't a metal band at all, but they're supposed to be a metal band with like corpse paint, but they sound like AM radio rock. There's a girl and she's like 12. And the singer dude is like trying to seduce this 12-year-old girl. It's like, this movie is just uncomfortable. Everything about this movie is wrong and uncomfortable.
Wow.
Charles Ghost says, thanks, JG and Jason, for the date night recommendations.
Hey, but by the way, I have to mention, there's something we forgot to mention about Trick or Treat that is really interesting. You remember the nerdy character that's friends with Ragman, Roger?
He was a writer.
That's Glenn Morgan. That's the guy who helped write most of the X-Files. And it's
Yeah.
and he did the Final Destination movies. I think he was involved with like maybe
1 and 3.
Yeah.
1 and 3.
Yeah.
I saw that. I didn't realize he was a writer, and I think this is the only time
his brother Darren is more well known as a writer because he did some of the best X-Files episodes. But yeah, both of them are like there's an X-Files connection to Trick or Treat.
I think Trick or Treat is an entertaining film. If you want to go back and really understand the Satanic Panic without watching a documentary, watch Trick or Treat and then watch The Gate. The Gate is fun. I can watch The Gate with my 5-year-old, and he can get a little weirded out, but not too scared. And that's kind of how I judge certain types of movies, because I know there's adults that don't want to be scared, and a lot of people don't want to see gratuitous violence for gratuitous violence's sake. I mean, on Twitter the other day, I was having a conversation with someone about horror movies. I think talking to you, someone had responded to me, and they were like, "How do you feel about the Terrifier movies?" I was like, "I don't really like them. I don't really dig them. It's just too much." Do you dig the Terrifier movies?
I'm not as big on the first one. But I like what Damien Leone did with the second Terrifier. Not necessarily for the gore. I get why people don't. I can understand why people don't like that aspect of it. But I thought Terrifier 2 was actually a really interesting movie. It was like they gave Damien Leone more money, and he said, they said I couldn't write a story with Terrifier 1, that it was just gore. So I'm going to write a movie that's really weird and basically feels like David Lynch does a slasher movie. Well, I watched Terrifier 2 in theaters, and that movie is profoundly weird. It's just
then maybe I should check out 2, because I thought 1 was like, yeah, I get it. It's just gross.
I mean, the only thing about Terrifier 2 is that it's really long. It's 2.5 hours long. But I mean, there's like dream sequences and like weird. It's like Twin Peaks with a killer clown. And I mean, there is some gory moments in it, some very, very gory moments. But I mean, I'll defend it on the grounds that I think it's just a very interesting movie stylistically, and there's a lot of surrealism in it. Like I said, it's very Lynchian, and there's like weird nods to Pee Wee Herman in it too, for some reason. Yeah, it's a profoundly weird movie.
That you're making it seem interesting, because I watched the first one and I wanted to like it. I didn't come into
the first one is. I'm not a big fan of the first one. I hate to say that because I like to support directors like Damien Leone. I think. I appreciate independent directors like that, but the first one I was just like, it's shock the kids. I mean, that's really who the movie is made for. The original Terrifier did very well. I remember because I went back to college. That's all the college kids were talking about around Halloween. It's an endurance test movie.
I guess but it's almost like we were talking about music the other day, and once you've called out the color of your butthole on a song, there's nowhere else for you to go. You can't. There's no follow-up single for that.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Right? You've done it all, and a lot of this stuff, I feel like if you've seen Last House on the Left, I don't really need to see I Spit on Your Grave.
Right.
We can talk. We've of course talked about that movie.
Yeah.
It's like, oof. You've seen one rape torture movie. Do you need to see 15?
I get you on that. I mean, it's funny. I think I was thinking about I Spit on Your Grave since we talked about it last time. I don't even I think I've like blocked the rape scene out of my head.
You just remember the vengeance?
No, I really like the revenge part because I mean, I really find that movie cathartic because I've known people that have been through. I had an ex that has been through some stuff, and I'm like, it's cathartic seeing that girl get her revenge on them all. But I mean. Yeah, movies like that, I can understand why. I mean, I'm not as big into the gore stuff myself, and I think gore for gore's sake can often be very boring, unless it's like Freddy Krueger style gore. I kind of dig that, but
the Tucker and Dale stuff brought me back because I was so out of it. and watching how funny they made the over the top gore. And then that get back when we were talking about that commentary of the fear of these people just because. Because when you go to the South, there's things that will frighten you. Gun racks are unsettling. Gun racks and Confederate flags can be the most unsettling thing to see. You know, walking around and seeing multiple of them. Gun racks, Confederate flags, MAGA hats. Add that to the mix. These things can make your trip to the South like a horror movie. You might think you're in Deliverance, but you're probably more so in Tucker and Dale land than you are in Deliverance. Sometimes.
Ain't that the truth? You're reminding me now. I need to rewatch. You ever seen Robert Englund is in it? It's a movie called 2001 Maniacs. That's the ultimate. I'm afraid of.
I used
like,
to own 2001 Maniacs.
It's a remake too of an old '60s movie by H.G. Lewis.
If you guys want to see what the South can seem like sometimes,
right?
Watch 2001 Maniacs with Robert Englund, where these people make a wrong turn and get into this town that is haunted. I guess you would say, right? It's haunted. JD.
Yeah. There's they're ghosts basically. Yeah,
they're ghosts from the Civil War. They're
right. They come back every year to do their festival and to get revenge on the Northerners. You know?
It's a bit much, but yeah, it's a fun movie to watch. As crazy as that probably sounds, but it's a horror movie.
Yeah, it's very fun. You have any before I go? Do you have anything else that you're watching for spooky season? I just saw. I don't really even consider it a horror movie, but I just saw 10 in theaters, and I'm not big on the Saw movies, but I really liked it because it's basically Saw meets Death Wish, and you get to see Jigsaw, played by Tobin Bell, killing a bunch of like alt health hucksters. So basically, it's Saw versus Kevin Trudeau, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and people that sell super nil vitality pills like Alex Jones. So.
Ooh, okay. That's not the one with Chris Rock?
No, that's Spiral. The new one that just came out is a midquel. It's a midquel. It takes place between the first and the second movie. And I mean, a lot of people are mad about it because they kind of make Jigsaw into the hero of it.
Someone, Lenny Powers, apparently, Lenny, I hope you're a patron. Lenny says, but Death Wish 3 though, because I had the channel watch Death Wish 3.
Right? Yeah. Death Wish 3 is like the second best sequel.
I wanted him to watch 2, but shout out to Jeremy Simon. He goes, I don't know, Jay. 2's kind of rapey.
2 is hard.
2 is so rapey and so offensive.
Yeah,
so offensive.
Very offensive. It's very Reagan's America.
It's so offensive. I couldn't stop laughing.
Right.
There's a scene where one of the characters, this black guy, he just sees a woman and he just goes crazy. He's like he gets into a trance. I was like, oh my God, who does that?
There's Lawrence Fishburne is in it, right?
Lawrence Fishburne died.
Yeah, he's Bronson shoots him and
he has a boombox and he's like and he puts the boombox and then he gets shot in between the eyes from the boombox and he dies.
Right.
And I was like, that was the best. If I ever meet Lawrence Fishburne, if you're real and I can go to LA and meet Lawrence Fishburne like randomly, I'd be like, dude, Death Wish 2, please. Can we reenact your scene?
Right.
That's another thing I like to do in LA. I don't know if you've ever done that in LA. I was staying at a hotel once, and I didn't realize it was the hotel where the movie Set It Off had that one final scene in the hotel, the shootout scene, and it's also the hotel that Eddie Murphy puts the banana in the tailpipe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So me and my friend were reenacting all our favorite scenes in this hotel because there were so many movies filmed there. We were just having so much fun just running around reenacting our scenes. I totally love doing that. That's how much. Now that's nerd shit. Owning movies, not nerd shit. in public reenacting scenes, with not even recording yourself with your friend, that's nerd shit. I think I win the nerd prize on that. What am I watching right now? I just watched Dead End from like 2001.
Dead End is actually really underrated. I mean, I watched that around Christmas. That's when it takes place with Ray Wise from Twin Peaks, and
Ray Wise.
I forget Lynn Shay is in that too.
Lynn Shay is the mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's like a mind screw movie.
The first time I hadn't seen it in a long time. I hadn't seen it in probably close to 20 years, and it holds up well. I think you can show Dead Set to some friends and be like, yeah, it's a pretty good movie. As Charles Ghost said, date night, Dead Set, great date night movie.
Okay, I have not seen Dead Set. Okay.
Or Dead Set. It's not Dead Set. I'm sorry, Dead End.
Oh, okay.
Is it Dead End or Dead Set? Dead End.
Dead End.
Dead End with Ray Wise. I rewatched Evil Dead 2.
I love Evil Dead 2.
And then
I actually just saw. Have you seen Evil Dead Rise yet?
No.
I actually enjoyed it. It's basically Demons 2. It's like a high-rise apartment horror, but with Evil Dead. So.
People saying Green Room, Lula Fortune. Lula Fortune, I don't know who you are unless we know each other in real life. And you have
Green Room's really good.
Green Room, they're talking about Green Room. Lula, I won't watch Green Room anymore. I watched Green Room once and I was like, frightening. Can't do it. I had a friend, I think I said this on the show the other day. I had a friend and we were watching Hostel. And he's like, turn it off right now. We're like, dude, what's your problem? He goes, when I tour Europe, I stay in hostels, and I've literally stayed in that place. in the city that's supposed to take place. And he goes, nope, not watching it. And that's how I feel about Green Room. I've had too many experiences on the road. We've never siphoned gas, but had too many experiences on the road where you played a show in some nowhere place, and someone goes, oh, my so-and-so can hook you up for a show in this part of town, in this place that you're going to next. And we drive to that spot and it's in the middle of nowhere and it looks like that shit. I've definitely played in some places. I'm like, there's no reason why I should be here right now. I have to get out of town. So no, F that. Great movie. That's how good of a movie that is. It was too real for me. Too real for me.
That's funny you mentioned Hostel, because I remember I had to watch that movie in my I had a class called A History of Violence in Cinema when I was in film school, and I hated that movie so much. I like the second one. I think it's there's a lot of humor in the second one, especially when you have Roger Bart, who played Hercules in the Disney movies. He literally turns heel in it, and then he yells, "I feel like fucking Hercules," and he becomes a killer. And I'm like, that is the funniest thing. But I hated the original Hostel. And I remember I argued with my teacher about it. I said, this movie is just like an attack on like Eastern Euros. It's like xenophobic frat boy crap. And she's like, no, you have to understand. It's like, it's a revenge movie against stupid Americans. I never thought of it that way. Maybe I will have to rewatch it.
It does. It feels that way, right? And it can make traveling, I don't know, to me, when you start traveling internationally, especially playing music, and you're nobody, it's one thing when you're somebody and there's posters of you all over town and you're on MTV or whatever the hell it is nowadays that you're on, that people know who you are when you come into town. That's a whole different experience than when you're nobody in a foreign country. That's scary.
Right.
Who gives a damn? Especially if you watched a bunch of Hostel movies. And then if you're lucky enough to have a tour manager, because there's certain places you just like, oh, you're gonna go to like the Balkans with no tour manager and you don't speak any of these languages. Have fun with that one. But there's places we stayed in different parts of the world. I'm like, where are we right now? Are we in a beauty shop floor saying you're like, it's okay?
Right.
So those movies just, because you have to put your trust in people you don't know. And I think that's what makes those movies, for me, a little unsettling.
No, I can see that. Yeah.
And Green Room is just so on the nose with the life that I led, because I don't tour anymore, as a touring musician. You trust that people say, hey, my cousin you know, he'll pay, and you'll get paid. That's another thing that gets you moving. Oh, they have the way to pay you X amount of dollars. Like, oh, that sounds great. You know, we've definitely played places and we're like, how does this guy have this much money to pay us? And there's like not that many people that show up. He goes, oh, it's kind of a front for a drug operation.
Right.
You're like,
You know,
what?
it's funny. I've only watched Green Room once, and as much as I liked it, it's not one that I want to revisit again. I mean, it's not like a comedic movie. It's a very serious movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There is something very unsettling about it. See, if I were to pick a recent movie that's like a horror movie about fucking evil Nazis, for me, it's Becky and the Wrath of Becky that just came out. Have you seen either of those?
No, but I need to now.
It's yeah. Well, they both star. They have the first one has Kevin James. That Kevin James,
the guy that's the meme now that's making me laugh uncontrollably.
He's the comedy dude.
Yeah, the guy that he's I got to send you one of these Kevin James memes.
Okay. Well, he plays like a leader of a neo-Nazi skinhead group.
Is it a
and
comedy?
He does a home invasion, and this 12-year-old who is like the most sociopathic 12-year-old has to fight him off, and she is like very vindictive. So it's like Home Alone on steroids with a hard R rating.
Are the Nazis using the hard R? Just kidding.
And then the sequel just came out. It has she decides to infiltrate a militia group, and the militia head is played by Sean William Scott, Stifler from American Pie. Yeah. And it's not like they play their roles seriously, but it's Tarantino like violence. So it's kind of, you know, there's a comedic end to it, you know.
Someone's asking us, have we seen Surf Nazis Must Die? I have.
Dude, Trauma? Yeah.
If it was a Trauma film.
You were probably lucky enough to see that when that was on USA Up All Night with Rhonda Shear.
I saw it. I was able to get it from a Blockbuster.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I remember saving my lunch money and then going to Blockbuster and getting it. Anything that was in Trauma, if I could read a Fangoria at, like, if I was at a bookstore, that's kind of where the only place Fangoria was, by me, a bookstore, and I would see movies they would talk about. Oh yeah, I was all about all things Trauma because I had no internet to just go Google everything Trauma. So if it had Trauma on the box, I was gonna see it. Officer Kabuki Man. Oh yeah, Tromeo and Juliet. Which is so heartbreaking for me that I haven't got Lloyd Kaufman on the show.
I may be able to help rectify
the
that.
first video I ever did for my band Le Fin Absolute du Monde, which got pulled from YouTube within minutes. The guy that made that video made a movie called The Period about a woman with a never-ending period. There was a lot of blood in that movie and so much nudity. Video has a lot of nudity. It's on Venmo, not Venmo. What do you call it? Right. Vivo? What do you call the one thing where you can watch videos?
Vimeo?
Vimeo? Yeah, it's on Vimeo. It's called She's Got to Be a Pirate, if you can find it. It's insane. The video's insane. Okay. But Lloyd Kaufman commented on it. He was like, oh, well, this is really cool.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, you should get Lloyd on the show. Lloyd, I mean, I'll say this about Lloyd Kaufman and Trauma. Like, Trauma, I think Trauma gets a bad rap in some ways. It's like, I mean, a lot of the movies they've made are not stellar. But,
yeah,
Trauma has actually released some like very good art house films. I mean, people don't know that, but like a Story of a Junkie from the 80s, which was an Amos Poe sort of punk film, very startling movie about heroin addiction. They also were the ones that released Buddy Giovinazzi's Combat Shock, which is a really great anti-war film. I mean, it's violent, but it's about a PTSD veteran, you know, a veteran with PTSD. So, I mean, the stuff Trauma is known for is I enjoy, like Toxic Avenger and stuff, but they've also released some stuff outside of the sort of camp stuff that is like very much, you know, overlooked.
You know, maybe those were passion projects by Lloyd.
Yeah.
There's a part of Lloyd.
He has a lot of passion projects.
There's a part of Lloyd that's a kind of a serious guy. Like when you hear him talking in interviews, his analysis of the film industry is amazing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've interviewed him about it. You know?
That's what I wanted to talk to him about. You know, I want to talk to him about, you know, capitalist production in the 80s. You know how him and
But he's a red diaper baby, so he'd probably love to talk about that.
how him and Band and Corman were able to kind of make a mint during that moment, and in that mint that they make, there's some great movies that come out of all that schlock and copy
Yeah.
stuff. There's some people that get careers out of that.
Oh, definitely. James Gunn came out of the Troma world, and now he's making Guardians of the Galaxy and running the DC superhero universe in the movies.
Oh, was
So,
James Cameron was the on one of those Corman movies,
Galaxy of
Galaxy
Terror.
of Terror, yeah, which is actually a really good Corman movie.
It's one of the weirdest attempts to cash in on Alien I've ever seen. You know, because there's like this weird psychological aspect to it, and it's almost like a haunted house movie.
If there's this guy that has this video, and he has 2 videos, it's all the Alien cash-ins from the 80s, or Aliens cash-ins from the 80s, and then all the Aliens cash-ins from the 90s. And they're both about an hour long, and they're really good because there's so many cash-ins from both of those movies. And some of those cash-ins to me are enjoyable. Like Die Hard cash-ins, some of them are enjoyable.
Oh, the Die Hard cash-ins are amazing.
We could do a whole, that's what we should do the next show. We should like do a whole show on like
It's really
cash-ins.
hard to get, but there's this insane Die Hard cash-in called I think it's called Hard to Die. And Jim Wynorski, who I've interviewed him. Jim's a character, but Jim is known for making low-budget Roger Corman horror movies with women that have big assets. But anyways, Hard to Die is actually Sorority House Massacre 3. It's a remake of the second movie, but with like a Die Hard subplot. It's called Hard to Die. It is absolutely insane.
That sounds kind of amazing. Because I'm not gonna lie, I get Sorority House Massacre and Slumber Party Massacre mixed up all the time.
Slumber Party Massacre to me is so much better than the first Sorority House.
First Sorority House is when the sorority leader lady, they drown her on accident in the pool.
I can't remember. I mean, Sorority House Massacre is very. It's that movie is weirdly self-serious. I mean, that you know, Slumber Party Massacre is like a feminist horror comedy. Sorority House Massacre is like, no, we're just a straight feminist horror. You know, both directed by women. So, you know,
I mean, the Driller Killer. By the time you get to, I think it's Slumber Party Massacre 2, is just, you know, he's Roger Rabbit. He's dancing around. The drill now has a guitar on it. He's Fonzie and Freddy.
Oh yeah,
it's just too much.
Yeah, the rockabilly thing.
Yeah, I didn't
there's
dig it.
The one that tries to do more what the original did. What's weird is, you know why you get Sorority House Massacre movies mixed up? The second Sorority House Massacre, all the footage to explain the killings is from Slumber Party Massacre. Like the flashbacks in Sorority House Massacre 2 are from Slumber Party Massacre rather than Sorority House. Yeah, it's weird.
Like when you watch enough of these movies, especially like certain Corman movies, there's so many scenes that they just steal from other movies, which to me makes it hilarious when you watch some of these movies. You're like, wait a minute, that's from the movie, you know, Air Force One with
yeah, I remember I would watch these Jim Wynorski and Fred Olen Ray movies where they always reuse the same car crash in every movie.
Well, if you watch anything from Corman's company, if it's in outer space, you're going to see some Galaxy of Terror stuff in the 90s and maybe even 2000s.
Right.
They're just going to slice it in. Oh, we need a spaceship. F it. There you go. Use that shot from Galaxy of Terror. We'll reverse it. Like, you know what I didn't realize for a long time? That the same guy that made the ships for Star Wars made the ships for the first Battlestar Galactica in the 70s.
Oh, really?
So if you look at the ships in Battlestar Galactica, they are the same colors as Star Wars ships.
Okay, huh.
They look exactly the same.
Right.
Like, I love that. Someone says Bruno Mattei. Bruno Mattei is my favorite because he made Strike Force Commando.
Dude, Bruno Mattei rules. I don't care what anyone says. Bruno Mattei's like a hero of mine because he's like an insane renegade. By the time he was like in his final years of life, he was making movies like The Tomb, where he literally stole shots from the 1990 Brendan Fraser The Mummy movie. And I'm like, this dude is bold. Also, Rat's Night of Terror is like one of my favorite Italo horror schlock
Bruno
fests.
Mattei, if I'm not mistaken, did Terror in Beverly Hills with what's Stallone's brother's name?
Frank Stallone.
Stallone. Didn't Bruno Mattei do that?
You know what's sad? I know that movie. I know what Terror in Beverly Hills is. I've seen it.
Oh, I've seen
I
it.
feel like no one else has seen that other than me and you. I don't know if Bruno did that movie. I'd have to look it up.
If you guys want to have a great laugh for no good reason at all, I follow Frank Stallone on Instagram. Frank Stallone, a little racist. Makes me think his brother might be too. I wouldn't be surprised. But Frank Stallone is in this movie. And I think Frank Stallone was following me for a while because I posted a video of me watching Terror in Beverly Hills because I had read somewhere that like people had voted this the worst movie of all time. And I was like, well, let me be the judge of that. I've seen some horrible films. And I don't think it's the worst movie of all time. But when you talk about so bad it's good, it's hitting all the beats. Made up Palestinian bad guys. Got it. People getting shot in a clothing store that don't make any. Got it. Frank Stallone as a karate badass that uses no karate. All the beats. And I posted like 2, and so Frank Stallone had liked him, and I was like, Frank Stallone just liked him. Okay, that's interesting. And then I just started following Frank Stallone back. I would say it's a big mistake, but he's an interesting follow on Instagram, to say the least.
Have you seen the legitimately good movie that he's in, Barfly?
No,
With Mickey Rourke. It's a Bukowski. Yeah,
you know what? You know what's good? The soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever. This is the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, in Barfly, he's the villain. He's basically this bartender that's always like, "I'm kicking you out, Bukowski," and then he like beats the shit out of Charles Bukowski, and like the whole movie is just Bukowski trying to get one win over Frank Stallone.
I thought Barfly was with Mickey Rourke.
It is.
Oh, Mickey Rourke is
Frank
Bukowski.
Stallone is the bad guy.
Okay.
I mean, he's the closest you have to a villain in that movie. It's Rourke and Faye Dunaway, but Frank Stallone is like the evil bar guy that always gets into fights with the Mickey Rourke Bukowski.
I gotta watch that then. Someone says their personal favorite so bad it's good as Fear.com. I vaguely remember Fear.com.
That's a movie I just don't remember. See, I've seen movies made on like $5 budgets, so I have a very skewed perception of what is really, really bad.
Yeah, when you start going down a rabbit hole of like bad film,
once you start watching like shot on video movies from the 80s, your whole perspective on what is bad. Yeah. I mean, there's some good shot on video movies. Like Video Violence is actually like, for its budget, a very good movie and much more story oriented. But there is like so many bad, like shoestring budget movies that were made in the 80s and 90s that were shot on video, not even on a film. But I hate putting down those kind of movies though, because I know some of the people who directed those movies.
My whole thing is like, if you took the time to make a movie, like that's a lot of work that goes into writing a script and finding people to want to be in your movie. You know, even if it looks like crap, it took hours to get those shots right. You edited that thing, you put music to that thing. You probably didn't know what you were doing, so you were learning on the fly. Like, I give props to people like that. Like, if you did it, congratulations for doing it. I don't have to dig it. Right? But yeah, someone says Things is the best shot on video movies. Things is another one of those movies. It's like, you did it.
Things is wild.
You did it. You made a movie. I haven't. And you know what? I don't have the patience to. If someone said, all right, Jay, you're going to have, X amount of months off to write a script and shoot a movie, I'd be like, I'd rather do the show. I'd rather figure out how to put shows together when people cancel on me last minute. I'd rather get in fights with the gang getting shows put together than try to sit down and write a movie, shoot a movie, edit a movie, get actors for this. That's a lot that goes into for that. Didn't have somebody say, yeah, F you in your movie. No, I'm good. You know what's really great? Just don't say anything at all. There's so much stuff I don't like. I don't need to tell you what I don't like.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've done that because I mean, there's certain movies I've seen from directors I personally know that I'm like, I'm just not going to comment on this one.
I just, well, you know how it is. There's in this world you and I are in, we could spend the next hour and watch the view count quadruple, super chats roll in if we just sat here and go, you know what I really hate, Jimmy Dore, and the like all
right,
and then you go, you know what I hate, Sam Cedar and his Jewy eyes. Like you say that, and all of a sudden, everybody's commenting, and I just don't care to bitch about that, right? I don't know. It's just not interesting.
No, totally.
It's not interesting to me to shit on somebody like that.
I was gonna say too, since you talked about some of the stuff you're watching for the spooky season, I had to forego. This is how much I love your show.
Mm-hmm.
I forgoed watching, the season premiere of Chucky to be on the show, and I'm like really excited about Chucky. I think I'm the only.
Then I have to give you a hug when we get to Florida. Then you're in Florida right now, right? Yeah. I got to give you a hug when we get to Florida. Then I appreciate that because I haven't seen the Chucky show, but everything I've seen from the Chucky show looks like it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's great fun. I mean, and Jennifer Tilly I love Jennifer Tilly.
All about the Tillys right now. Those women.
Meg is in it. Meg
I saw that she's in it.
Second season.
I mean, we did the whole show. We talked about Meg Tilly with the Psycho show.
Yeah.
Because she she steals it for me in that movie.
But season 3 of Chucky, I think this may end up being the last one. Is they're not doing what they did last time. What they've done the last 2 seasons was they wouldn't put all the episodes up on Peacock all at once. Tomorrow, all the episodes will be on Peacock, everyone, for season 3. So I don't know, that I'm sort of wondering. I'm like, oh, are they trying to wrap things up? But yeah, Chucky is going to DC. He's going to be in the White House. Chucky in the White House.
They have fun with that thing now.
Yeah,
they get it.
That the first Child's Play though would actually be, or the first 3 movies would be interesting to revisit because they're kind of subversive for their time. They deal with consumerism.
I enjoyed the first Child's Play a lot, and I enjoyed the second one, if I remember it correctly. I don't remember if I've ever even seen the third. I'm not real.
The third one has like an anti-military angle to it.
That's when he went to military school. The kid.
I
almost said Andy. It's not Andy. Is it Andy?
Yeah, Andy. Yeah, they recast him with a different actor.
Because Andy's a guy from Toy Story as well.
Right.
I don't know if I'm sure there's a joke there with the people at Pixar. But no, dude, I this era of film for me, the Satanic Panic era, like I said, if there's anything with playing a record backwards, a heavy metal soundtrack,
right?
Not so much demon possession stuff. I'm not.
I was saying that to someone recently, by the way. I really liked that newer demon possession movie, Talk to Me. I know Ben Burgess liked it.
Wait,
too.
which one was Talk to Me?
It just came out. It's these kids decide to play like a demon possession game, and they always put it on their phones, but then one of the possessions go wrong. Like they do it on their Instagram. They're like, haha, look, we got possessed by a demon through this hand that we bought. But it just came out this year.
Oh, then
it did really well in theaters. But I enjoyed it because it was such a different take on the genre. It's like most demon possession films, it's the exact same thing over and over. It's like, oh, the exorcism of Emily Rose, the exorcism of God knows who, Molly Hartley, whatever. Yeah, like they're just so boring. Like I'm sorry, but I really don't want to see Exorcist Believer.
I don't either. The trailer's great, right? The trailer's that looks interesting. Am I going to watch it? I don't know. Ben will watch it. Like Ben makes fun of me because he goes, there's so many movies that you enjoy that I will not watch. And if he hasn't come down here in a while, but he'll come down here and be like, no, we're going to watch blah, blah, blah. And then we sit there and watch blah blah blah, and they were laughing, and we're like, "Oh, that's a better movie than I thought." And what I will say about this new crop of directors, every so often, there's a movie that makes me go, "I didn't see that coming. This is really interesting. I really dig what you've done with the genre, be it horror comedy, with stuff like all the people from New Zealand are killing it to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in the water there, but from what we do in the shadows to the Deathgasm movies, they are nailing it with the comedy horror stuff, because you don't get tired of it. Did you like What We Do in the Shadows, the movie?
I haven't seen it.
Did you watch the TV show?
I need to rectify that. I haven't seen the TV show either. I mean, I don't know. It's something I've overlooked.
I didn't want to see it. I thought it was going to be stupid. Okay. And Jean Bajlan was like, "Jason, please watch that movie. It's really good." I watched the movie and I just fell out. I was like, "This is hilarious." And then I was like, "There's no way I'm going to watch the TV show. There's no way it's going to be any good." And I watched the TV show. I was like, "This is hilarious."
Surprising, yeah.
It's hilarious. There's and Deathgasm. Have you seen the Deathgasm movies?
I've been meaning to watch Deathgasm. I had that lined up for this month, probably.
So hilarious. I'm again, one of those things I made Ben watch. I was like, "Ben, this is going to be your life. You're going to watch them and be like, yep, that was me in high school. This is the dream I would have wanted to have in high school." And he loved it. Wow. There's some people making some entertaining stuff, and then there's people that are just copycats. And like the slow burn horror, I'm just like,
that's what I'm worried about with I'm gonna watch it just because of the cast, but I'm worried that I'm gonna be really disappointed with the new Pet Sematary movie. Pet Sematary Bloodlines, because whenever a movie has bloodlines in the title, you know there's gonna be something wrong with it. That's what happened with Hellraiser.
Let's stop revisiting. Again, that's why some of these cats that I dig, because we got like movie we're talking about right now, Trick or Treat. How does it start? Dito De Laurentiis goes, "Make me a Freddy movie. Okay, make me a Freddy movie, but a pumpkin guy. Gonna call him Trick or Treat. Release it."
I like your impersonation. There is a reason I will watch the new Pet Sematary, though. At first, I like David Duchovny, who's going to star in it. And the other one, for some reason, they cast Pam Grier as the sheriff. And I will watch anything with Pam Grier. So it doesn't matter if this is going to be a mediocre movie. I will be happy if I get my Pam Grier.
Pam Grier can do one of those movies you get when you start a retail job. Like, everyone here at Safe Mart is a family. And if Pam Grier is the one in that movie, I will watch it.
Right.
I will totally watch it.
No, I feel you on that.
Jackie Brown. Oof. I'm not a Tarantino fan, but I will watch Jackie Brown anytime it comes on.
That's his best movie.
By far.
By far, yeah.
Because I grew up, again, going to the video store, and I had to watch these. I felt like there was just things I had to see. I don't know if you guys watching this channel are the same way. Like when you were a certain age, you're like, well, I have to see these movies if I'm going to get into this thing, right? So again, just wouldn't eat, and I would rent like the Mac and coffee. And once I saw Pam Grier, I was like, oh, well, anything that's got this woman in it.
Right. I remember I first came across Pam Grier when I was like 11, 12 years old, maybe. And we had VOD service at my with my grandmother's cable. So I was watching on her TV. I was watching, these VOD movies for like $2.99, like Black Mama.
I was going to say the prison ones.
Yeah. Oh my God.
If you watch any of those Pam Grier prison movies, you're just like, I think I'm an adult now.
It was for me it was like my awakening into teenagedom was Pam Grier and then Sybil Danning from The Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf.
Oh,
because my dad would always I didn't always do it very well, but my dad would always be like, I don't want you to see the sex scenes. But The Howling 2 had so much sex in it that he was just like, whatever.
Wait, is The Howling 2 the one?
That's the one with the Sterba, werewolf bitch.
That's not the one with
and Reb Brown. It's Reb Brown.
Okay, Reb Brown. That's all you had to say. Reb Brown.
Yeah.
That's all you had to say. Thank you, Reb Brown. The Reb Brown. Is he? Can we get him on the show?
Yeah, I don't even. I. That's a good question. I don't know where Red Brown is these days. I'd have to ask around some of the convention circuit people I know.
These are the people that I would love for us to interview, and you have to make this happen.
Right.
Caroline Williams from Texas Chainsaw 2.
Caroline can be hard to get. I tried getting Caroline on, but
Phoebe Cates.
oof.
Right? For no other reason than Gremlins and Fast Times. Definitely
That
Fast
was
Times.
probably that was like an instant crush for me growing up. Like it was hard. Like even as like a little kid that's like, "Ooh, I'm afraid of cuties." Like there is something magnetic to you as like a 7-year-old about Phoebe Cates. You know what I mean?
Bill Moseley. I met Bill Moseley.
I actually know someone that could probably get us an in with.
I met
Moseley.
Bill, and he will never remember this. I met Bill Moseley at a horror convention in San Francisco, and he was just the nicest man.
He used to write for science magazines too. He interviewed Timothy Leary at one point. He has interesting stories.
Yeah, he's like
around.
he's a horror.
He's in that band with Buckethead.
But he's a legit horror fan that wasn't even in the So Moseley. I would love to talk to Moseley. Who's the cat that did Society?
Brian Usna. We'll talk about that after.
Okay. Oh God, now you're scaring me.
No, I think that may actually be doable.
Usna.
I interviewed. I mean, he's kind of a conservative dude.
Is
and
he?
He has no, not Usna. The guy that wrote Society, Zeph Daniel.
Really?
Zeph Daniel wrote Society, and it's originally supposed to be it was supposed to be about a satanic cult. Zeph is an interesting guy. He thinks that he was a ritual abuse victim. So he's, I mean, I don't make fun of him for anything like that. Like I've told him, I'm like, I don't really believe in that satanic panic stuff that you believe in, but he's an interesting guy, and he wrote Society, Zeph Daniel. But yeah, Society is an interesting movie. The trajectory of that movie, because it started out very much it was going to be a satanic panic movie, and then Usna completely changed the script
for the better. I mean, a lot of people probably can't handle it, but the butthead scene, everything is worth the butthead scene.
Yeah,
the butthead, the whole movie, even if you think the movie sucks.
I was going to say Zeph, by the way, Zeph Daniel, and I do consider him a friend. I've talked to him a few times. He also wrote Bride of Reanimator.
Oh,
and he wrote Silent Night, Deadly Night 4.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, we have some disagreements politically, but he's done some interesting horror movies.
But
Brian, I think I may be able to work that. We should do a Parallax Views TIR crossover.
Yeah, we could stream. I have the ability for you to stream this on your channel as well. I effed up and didn't send you the link for that. I would love to talk to who else would we love to? You know who would be the dream get? Robert Englund.
Right.
Robert Englund.
He's doing the rounds now for that
documentary.
Hollywood Dreams and Nightmares documentary. Yeah.
I think we should try to get a hold of Robert Englund, because I've seen some interesting interviews with him, but he's a California guy, first and foremost.
Right.
I am a California guy, and I want to talk to him about his time doing V as well.
See, that's what I would do. I would be like Robert Englund from the TV series V.
Mm-hmm. Dead and Buried. Dead and Buried is like a hidden classic film.
No, Dead and Buried is really good. He's in the early Tobe Hooper movie, Eaten Alive. He's actually like central to that movie.
So yeah, if we can get those people, then I think I would feel very accomplished. I'm sure there's a handful more actors if we really start thinking about it that we love to have.
So you're a Carolyn Williams fan, though?
Yeah.
Have you seen? She did a movie a year ago called 10 Minutes to Midnight.
Every time you say that, all I hear is Judas Priest.
Yeah, or you think of the Charles Bronson movie.
Right? That's what I'm thinking of. Right? Is that the one where the killer is butt naked?
Yes, Jesus. We talked about that extensively last time. Yeah, but this is actually this is a great Halloween movie for people to watch, and I want to promote Caroline because I think she does good work. But she was just in this indie movie, 10 Minutes to Midnight. She plays a radio DJ, much like her character in
Texas Chainsaw 2.
She's into heavy metal in this movie and whatnot. But the beginning is she's been bitten by a bat, and the whole movie is her going through psychological changes as she's transforming into a vampire.
Oh no, we
You know,
gotta.
it's really like what?
We gotta get her on then.
Yeah. I don't usually say this, but that's like I've heard no one talk about 10 Minutes to Midnight. It is one of the best horror movies.
I'll
I've seen
check it
in the
out then. I'll
past
check it out.
2
I
years.
also have to
Yeah.
watch still, I'm a Barbara Crampton fan.
I love Barb.
Oh, so so we can do a show with Barbara Crampton.
I know some people that know Barbara, but
I haven't. What's the vampire movie she did?
oh, she did one a few
Yeah,
years ago.
a couple years ago.
I'm blanking on
Anyway,
the
we
name.
got to get her. Someone says Sean Cunningham.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to Sean Cunningham because I think his rise to fame is hilarious.
Right.
I want to do one of those movies and make all the money. Because I would love to talk to him about what he wanted to do with his career before it got taken over by Friday the 13th.
Right.
He's not a horror guy.
I think Sean would be an interesting person to speak to because he really, he just had that feud with Victor Miller over the rights to Friday the 13th. I mean, Sean Cunningham's interesting. I mean, he's done stuff outside of Friday the 13th. I mean, Last House on the Left, The New Kids, which is my favorite Lori Loughlin movie. So I think he did Deep Star 6 as well.
Which isn't bad. I didn't think it was a bad movie. Of all the underwater movies. Yeah. We could do a whole thing on the underwater alien movies as well. Deep Star. Leviathan
rules.
Also the space was like Event Horizon. I love Event Horizon.
I've been meaning to watch Event. That's another one I haven't seen for some reason.
A great for your Halloween viewing pleasure, back to back. Watch Event Horizon and Life Force.
I love Life Force.
Oof.
Yeah, Matilda May. I mean, I know both of us. I saw that when I was young too, and it was like Life Force, Matilda May in that movie. My God.
So I was scared of Life Force as a kid. I don't know if anybody watched this was the same way or listened to this the same way. I was scared of Life Force as a kid because it hit cable right away in like the mid 80s. I think my parents might even have still been married. And the trailers for Life Force used to terrify me of Matilda May because the trailers they're shooting from neck up. Because it was Life Force and Vamp.
Vamp is amazing.
Vamp.
Grace Jones.
Grace Jones and Vamp and Matilda May and Life Force for young Jason was frightening. For adolescent Jason, game changers. Game changers. Matilda May and Life Force and Grace Jones and Vamp, game changer. Both very good movies. One of Tobe Hooper's most underrated film, I think, is Life Force. Because that's when he was doing the stuff with Cannon.
I think that's true. I have to revisit Life Force. I've watched his other Cannon movies more often, like Invaders from Mars is another one he did.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw 2, in a lot of ways, I actually prefer that to the original.
Because of the camp element?
The camp element. I also just think it's a very funny anti-yuppie movie. That movie is kind of a riff on like capitalism gone wild, right? Like I won't go as far as to say it's like an anti-capitalist movie, but it's basically saying like, well, the logical end result of capitalism, cannibalism. They get rich selling their chili made of human flesh. There's a weird subversive anti-Reagan element. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think we talked about that. I don't know if it was you or I was talking with Burgess or somebody. We talked about that with People Under the Stairs, which is the greatest anti-Reagan movie of all time. If you want to add that to your Hollywood,
I love People Under the Stairs.
People Under the Stairs is a fun movie that just throws the two of the biggest middle fingers to the Reagan administration because it comes out in 1990. So it's written right at the tail end of that time. And everybody in it, Ving Rhames is great. The little kid is great.
Well, Everett McGill and Wendell Robbie, who plays the man and the woman who are the evil landlords. I mean, they're supposed to be Nancy and Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, yeah. And they nail everybody in that movie is great. I think it's a movie of its time. So if you're younger and listening and you're going to go watch it, just keep that in mind. It's definitely a movie of its time. It's very 90s. So it means it's very bright. Horror movies nowadays are so dark that they've been very dark for the last 20 years.
And that's because they have to cover up the bad CGI. I've had people from Hollywood say that to me.
That sounds about right. I'll take that. And there's a difference between that moment in the 90s where everyone goes, we'll just get a star from the WB or CW network and we're going to have a bunch of pretty faces on the cover.
Right.
Like, there's movies for me of that era that I kind of dig. And if someone's slightly younger than me, like if you came over and you were like, dude, let's watch like Urban Legends or something, I'd be like, all right. And I can enjoy it. Like, my daughter likes that stuff. My daughter's 25.
It's weird. I only got into new horror like a few years ago. I skipped all. I was the weird kid that would go to that video. The reason I like this 80s stuff is just because I had a video store that specialized in it. So it's like, that's how I got into all this. That's why people think I'm a Gen Xer when I was really born 91. You know, like it's, but I only just got into the new horror stuff from the 2000s. And a lot of it really is not that memorable, you know.
Because it's all Scream.
Yeah.
Wes Craven changes the game twice. Once was Freddy, and everybody needs a wisecracking killer because Jason and Michael Myers and Leatherface don't talk. They all get wisecracky post Freddy. And then he changes it with Scream, and it's got to be a whodunit. Right. And all those movies are whodunits with pretty kids. And I didn't need to see 50 million whodunits with pretty kids and the same angles. Like, there's so much is copied. And that's what you get with capitalist production, right? It's like, if you like this, you're going to like 12,000 more of it with a twist.
Right.
It's cornflakes with a strawberry in it now. It's not regular cornflakes. Put a strawberry in it, $5 more.
Right.
And if you, like me, buy strawberry cornflakes, then you probably will watch. I still know what you didn't do last summer with the Urban Legend.
Right. I will watch. I still know what you did last summer more than the first one. Or not I still know. What was it?
I'll always
know.
I'll always know.
The second one I like better than the first one.
Yeah, I still know what you did last summer. Yeah.
Jennifer,
that's where
it's
like the dad of the guy, and there's too much. And this is coming from someone that's watched like all the Jason movies, which are ridiculous.
Right.
Ridiculous. After 5, for me, I don't need to watch a Friday the 13th movie. Freddy vs. Jason is fun. It's everything that a person like me wants in that movie. It's just ridiculous. Right. But when you watch 5 is with Corey Feldman, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No. That's 4.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 is the one with the fake Jason killer.
I didn't mind fake Jason, actually.
I love Friday the 13th Part 5. I met Danny Steinman, the director of that, when he was still alive. There's an interesting story about that where he so Danny Steinman was at this movie convention, the guy who made Friday the 13th Part 5, and he decided to use they had a VHS room where they would show movies. And he's like, well, can I show the 170s porno movie I did? It's called High Rise. And they're like, I guess they let him do it, but like some of the people at the convention were pissed off. And everyone's looking at me. They're like, I don't want to sit down and watch a porno with like a 70-year-old dude. I'll do it. I'll just talk movies with him for like an hour. You know?
That would be uncomfortable. If somebody said that to me, that would make me uncomfortable. Like, are you going to take your fucking hog out?
I learned a lot. He gave me like insights.
That's not what you say if you watch the porn with this. I learned a
lot. And then we talked about the movie Savage Streets that he did with Linda Blair. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I got that dude. The director of Friday the 13th Part 5 was like mobbed up.
If you listen, JG and I have went on for too long. We're now getting into Joe Rogan.
We need to cut off.
Yeah. We're getting into Joe Rogan territory, but listen. Savage Streets. Have you seen Savage Streets, JG Michael?
I love Savage Streets. Go fucking iceberg.
Savage Streets is a movie. I think is it R? It's got to be R. No, I think it's PG.
R.
Is it
an R? Yeah, it's definitely an R.
Linda Blair plays this like bad girl, and she's got these friends. There's
her sister is a mute Linnea Quigley.
Isn't it Quigley's first movie?
It's not her first movie, but it's an early one.
I think the rape scene in that movie, like the actors got mad at the director.
It's hard to watch. Yeah, the director, Steinman, yeah.
There's a lot. People like walked off set. I think somebody quit. I think after that movie. one of the actresses quit. But anyway, that movie is a movie of its time that you have to go back and really appreciate for that time.
Right.
Because the teacher or the vice principal in it
is Dean Warmer.
Dean
John
Warmer
Vernon.
slaps the shit out of Linda Blair in that movie in the school. Remember, like she was like, I think she got in trouble for something, and he just slaps the shit out of her. And I remember Ben was walking by. He used to write here a lot, actually, and he was writing something. And he goes, "What the fuck are you watching?" Because you just see this principal slap the shit out of a student. And you know, and what she do after she gets slapped, she just goes back to her friends like, "No, fuck the principal." They just go off.
See, I remember that, and I remember when he says to the one bad kid, the villain of the movie, he's like, "Go fucking iceberg," which is the greatest line ever.
He's just so fearless. He is so fearless with the way he treats these kids.
Yeah, that's the great thing, though. I remember the first thing I asked Danny Steinman when I had that experience of watching his porno movie High Rise with him. I was like, "So how did you get John Vernon to be in Savage Streets?" And he's like, "Oh, he owed my friends some money for cocaine." I was like, "Shit, Danny, you were like tied in with like mob types, man." But Friday the 13th Part 5 is honestly like one of my favorite Friday movies. It's the sleaziest one. It is
That's the Crispin Glover dance scene.
No, that's the fourth one.
No, Crispin Glover's in 5.
Crispin Glover's in 4, dude. I know my shit.
Somebody Google it. If he's right twice, I need to give JG a fruitcake.
That's how much of a nerd I am.
I need to send him. Can I send you a big bag of candy corn?
I do like my candy corn.
Because you know why? Because you're a good man. That's why anyone that doesn't like candy corn, don't trust him. Don't trust him.
Lenny Powers points out, yeah, Vernon was also amazing in Killer Clowns from Outer
Space. He said he was so sweaty and killer. Now we know why.
He was probably doing a lot of cocaine.
He was just coked out of his mind. Michael Ray says Glover's in 4. The breakdancing scene is in 4?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting so 5 is Tommy's all of a sudden like
Tommy
29.
is older and he goes to the
like, adult place.
The adult mental care place.
What else was in? Who else was in 5?
The black dude from Return of the Living Dead is in it. That's what Michael Jackson looked like.
That's not the scene where he gets killed on the shitter, right?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
baby.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah.
First of all, I've been black for about 46 years now. And in all the 46 years of being black, and I've eaten food that has disagreed with me. I mean, before I started the show today, I ate a salad that Toussaint told me, "Why did you eat that?" I won't tell you what the salad was because you will ask the same question. I'm gonna type what the salad was because I want you to know, because you're gonna say that's stupid. I'm typing you what salad I had. There you go.
Just tell me.
I'm not gonna. I don't want to see it. You weren't supposed to say it up there.
I had to do it. You opened yourself up for that. You opened yourself up for that one, man.
No one is safe with JG Michael. Just remember that. Someone says Mexican sushi is pretty wrong. I wish I had that. I did not have that. And even when food has disagreed with me, and I've been in and out, I never thought to, while taking a shit, start singing Negro spirituals while my girlfriend's on the other side of the door listening to me have an ass explosion. Those things. And being black for 46 years, gotten to know tons of black people, tons of them in my family. No one has ever sang on the toilet while having
it's one of the weirdest scenes I've ever seen
in cinema history.
Yeah, probably.
These people love singing and dancing. But he's taking his shit, boss. They sing and dance even when they shit, son.
I'm just surprised. The first 4 Friday movies are your thing. You're not into like, I mean, there's the New Blood where he fights basically a stand-in for Carrie. He goes to Manhattan, which really that's only 20 minutes of the final act of the movie.
Fucking hated Canada Hadden.
Yeah, it wasn't Canada.
Yeah, Canada Hadden. I hated that. Jason in Space, I tried to watch.
Jason in Space is fun, but it's an acquired taste.
Right? You're kind of like, I get it.
And then there was Jason Goes to Hell, aka Jason basically being it's basically a remake of The Hidden, from the 80s with Kyle MacLachlan.
No.
I mean, in a weird way, it's like a version of that story with Jason body swapping with people,
Yeah, that's right.
Jason
I vaguely remember Jason Goes to Hell. I vaguely remember that. I told you I just watched Freddy vs. Jason when me and Burgess were going through all the Freddy movies. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of fun, because I watched it when it came out and then I forgot about it, and then watching it again, I was like, this is fun. But Jason movies are just so all over the place for me.
Right.
Then I'm just like, And I saw I watched all the knockoffs. I've seen Sleepaway Camp 1 through 45. Pamela Springsteen. Let's get Pamela Springsteen on the show.
She will not talk about those movies.
Why?
Because she's a serious photography person now.
She can still take serious pictures.
They have tried to get her at every movie convention I know about. She will not do it. She's like, nope, I don't want to do it. I'm a serious person now. I don't like this stuff.
That's so weird. What's the woman's name? I forget her name, but she's the little girl from Sleepaway Camp, the first one.
Felissa Rose, who is actually
Felicity Rose.
Felissa Rose. I forget who she dates. I know she's involved in the metal scene with like someone from Slayer, or I think she knows some people from the punk band Can't Kill Yourself, CKY.
CKY, yeah.
She's done music videos for people.
I could see that.
Yeah, Felissa's cool as hell.
She seems fun. She's fun to interview. Like that's
yeah.
Like, people have to understand, like, there's a lot of people you want to interview, but some people just don't want to talk to anybody, and they're not fun, and they don't want to talk about anything you want to talk about. The fact that John Cusack is doing a screening of Better Off Dead is huge, because he hated that movie. He hated that movie.
I'm surprised that you're willing to admit that you're a fan of the Sleepaway Camp movies. I know I've seen article after article debating the first movie because of the problem that. I mean, the weird thing is, I'm like, no, it's an LGBTQ revenge film, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, everyone who gets it in it, you're like cheering for them to get it.
Yeah, I think
she murders a pedophile cook in it. I'm like, no, I was cheering when that happened.
When we go back and watch some of these movies and people have a certain rewriting of the history, and it's always people that weren't even alive during the time. It's like people that hate on what's the movie where the dude is possessed by the devil and makes out with his friend, not his friend, but makes out with the bully in the shower?
Oh God, I don't even know.
I can't. And a gay man wrote it, and there's people that think it's an anti-gay film. It's like, well, a gay man wrote it about his own coming out, and I don't think there's anything about that film that's anti, right? It doesn't have the ending that you point out in Freddy's Revenge, where a woman comes in and saves the day. And there seems to be kind of like, people want to take these things that aren't even really that classic and beloved,
right,
and use it to write their 10,000 word dissertation.
I have to be honest. I've said that to people when there's always an article on Bloody Disgusting reevaluating Sleepaway Camp, and I know there's actually trans women I know that are very supportive of it. They like they're right about how much they love the movie. But what's interesting to me is I'm like, how can you cancel Sleepaway Camp? Like, other than like maybe more than a handful of people, but like it's not like millions and millions of people are like, oh, we need to debate the merits of Sleepaway. It's such a minor movie, like,
any movie in the 80s and 90s that had any sort of what we called it at the time, cross-dressers, transsexuals, right? Anything that had that at the time, they were villains. Watch an Andy Sedaris movie, watch any Charles Bronson movie, if you are some sort of cross-dressing or trans character, you're the villain. Like I said, Gene Simmons playing the hermaphrodite bad guy in Never Too Young to Die or whatever it's called. Like, you're always the villain. And in this movie, she's not really the villain, and it's just for shock value.
Right.
Again, much like songs that are talking about, all the ass you're going to eat and what color your holes are. That's just shock value. And Sleepaway Camp just goes away from that after that, right? I think the main character, Angela, has a full-on sex change, and it's not really addressed anymore that much.
No, it isn't. Yeah. I mean, it's weird. I will get flack for this from the horror community.
Mhm.
I like Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3 much more than
Really?
the first one, and I like it better. I like it much better than Return to Sleepaway Camp. Well, it's almost like they're different movies entirely.
They are. Because, again, they're trying to take that whole element away of, which one is it? Is it the brother or the sister, right? It's And I can't look at something that was done in 1981, 82, maybe 83. Sleepaway Camp comes out, maybe. That's all shock value. They're not trying to make a social statement like the Death Wish movies are,
right?
And the Sedaris movies are, and even the Sedaris movies to some degree are not trying to make a social statement.
I think Sedaris just wanted to make a ton of money.
He just
while he was doing it. He's basically like the Adam Sandler of his time in that way. Because, Adam Sandler now will just make movies that are big vacations for him. He's like, I want to go to New Zealand. Let's make a movie there. That's what he did with the Hawaii movies. Andy Sedaris. He's like, I want to make movies with big.
They're all in Hawaii and Vegas. I don't find that coincidental at all. I'm sure he's got a big pile of cocaine over there where he was, a lot of that Motley Crue book, they talk about being in Hawaii with drug dealers and cocaine and all that stuff. So I'm sure they were all having the same party. And you're coked out of your mind. And it's just shock value for shock value's sake. There's ninjas in those movies for no reason whatsoever.
By the way, I saw that someone, I know we'll wrap up, but I saw that someone in the YouTube comments asked, did they talk about the Toolbox murders? I just want to say,
which one?
I love both of them, but I love the original, even though that is probably not the best thing to say, because that movie is like sleazy and grimy and mean on a level that you don't see in a lot of movies. I love the original Toolbox Murders. I like the Tobe Hooper one too, actually, but that first one, it's like a woman getting electrocuted in the bathtub while she's pleasuring herself. What the fuck? I mean, that movie, I'm like, what? This is gonzo shit, man. Like,
well, so again, some of these guys, like, how do I get butts in the seats? I just have to be more insane.
Well, movies like that too were showing at like some of the grimiest theaters on 42nd Street in New York.
It just got to be insane,
right?
Just got to be insane, and that's what people were doing. They were pushing each other's boundaries, and I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying we should applaud it. I'm just saying it as a statement of fact. If you want to start your analysis, please start it there, and stop thinking that there was this much thought put in to how these movies were going to be done. Now people say the word final girl. I really refuse to believe that when they're making, Chop 'em Up in the Forest 5 in 1987, they were talking about, well, who's the final girl going to be? No, they didn't give a damn.
Right.
What do we need? We need a broad to die in the end. We need a broad to die in the end. Who's going to be the broad to die in the end? The one with the smallest tits is going to be the one that dies in the end. Oh, right. That's how these guys are talking when they're making these movies. And I think we have to kind of look at it more realistically instead of thinking about it. We can have these conversations about what the bigger meanings that sometimes we think about these movies, but ultimately we know that a handful of directors probably had some bigger meanings in their films. A bunch of other guys were like, you're going to pay me to make a movie, and I love making movies. Hell yeah, I'm going to make whatever.
Or you're just out of film school, and you're like, hey, how can we make a movie and get our foot in the door? We can do a low budget movie on Staten Island, call it Madman. Yeah, that's an actual movie, Like, I think The Burning is similar in that regard. I think it was like they were just starting out, but the one movie that stands out, if you're going to watch one slasher movie this month that you wants something that's kind of above the usual antics of a slasher movie, is Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, which is that is a deeply that's a pro gay slasher movie. And the real villain of it is like a cop. I mean, it's really subversive for its time.
Ooh, shout out to JG. Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. For all these people, this is anti. Watch that movie. That's a good one that a lot of people slept on. I think the title is kind of like, what the hell is this?
It's a weird title. I think it got re-released a few times under different. It was once called Night Warning, which
It's
maybe
definitely on
even
streaming.
worse title.
It's on streaming right now. You can get it on Shudder and Amazon and stuff. Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. I've watched that multiple times recently.
Oh, really? I mean, it really works well. I mean, especially Bo Svensson, who previously played Buford Pusser in the Walking Tall sequels. He plays the homophobic cop in it, and he's like brutal in that movie. You know, like using the F word and whatnot, but like you really hate him in that movie. You're like, wow, what a horrible, evil scumbag cop detective. You know? I mean, it's very subversive for its time.
That's a fun movie. Well, look, I want to know. We're approaching our 3 hours. Like I said, we hit Joe Rogan time. Like this is too long.
I'm sorry. You know,
no. I'm sorry. I knew this was going to happen. You knew this was going to happen, right? We get along for a reason, JG.
Right.
I want to know what you guys are going to be watching for Spooky Month, as JG calls it. Halloween is Spooky Month. Give me some suggestions, because I'm going to go back and watch the same things over and over again. I try to dip into my toe back into the Giallo waters, but it's just too scary and it's too quiet where I'm too secluded. But I want to know what you guys are watching. Let's make a list. These things to me are that much fun. When I see what you guys are watching, I always learn about new stuff. I love the suggestions. Keep it.
I have to be honest. I'm like amazed at how knowledgeable your audience is about these movies.
Dude, I never know what I'm going to get with a show. Last night, I thought we were going to have this great show. We had Paul Prescott, who's literally a union organizer. We had one of my favorite economist friends, Dr. Jack Rasmus, talk about, kind of the impetus for the UAW strike, where it could go, kind of history. Great show, views. I don't know what people like. I'm just gonna keep doing it. Hopefully, people keep turning it. They like the horror talks. So this is fun for me. Beyond the Black Rainbow is a masterpiece, says Joey Nichols. Kushlik says Giallo is life. Yes, it is. I love Giallo movies. What is Beyond the Black Rainbow?
I haven't seen that movie, but I do know it's like a newer horror movie from, I think, the 2010s. I think it's like an art house horror. I saw someone comment at that.
If Beyond the Black Rainbow is some moody bullshit, I will yell at you the next time we do one of these.
I've never seen it, so.
No, not you, JG. Whoever
suggested
it. I didn't even see who suggested it. So, Joey Nichols. I can't. It's very small print, and I don't have my glasses on. So your name is going to be Nicholas from now on.
Whoever mentioned the Last Circus, I will watch anything with that was directed by Alex de Iglesias, who may be one of the most insane Spanish directors ever.
Is he the dude that made that crazy movie in the 80s?
He made Day of the Beast.
Yeah.
The priest that decides like he has to stop the Antichrist, so he commits as many sins as possible before he goes to hell.
That's the one where there's a movie he made where the guy was in his pajamas for like the most of the movie.
I mean, they run together a lot for me, but yeah.
Yeah, that dude's crazy. They said this is the guy that did Mandy. Well,
I don't know who did Mandy. That's interesting. Yeah.
We got to check out Beyond the Black Rainbow by Joey Nichols. Joey Nichols, I'm going to check out Beyond the Black Rainbow just because I like the title of it. That sounds like a fun date night movie. I may actually have a date this weekend. So on that note, thank you so much, JG, for hanging out. Sorry you missed the premiere of Chucky. I have a feeling you can still watch it.
I'm gonna watch all the episodes tomorrow. Probably.
Okay, there we go. See, now I don't feel bad. I felt bad for like 7 minutes. Now I don't feel bad.
I'm just happy they're putting it all on Peacock all at once. You know.
I thought Peacock is gone.
No.
Oh, well, we can't have it here in Mexico.
Oh, really?
That just means
Yeah,
a lot of stuff that's on Peacock is on like Netflix.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
You can watch
it
The
gets
Office
weird
on
with that
Netflix.
streaming stuff, man.
It's not fun. Trust me.
I had friends in the UK that were like losing their minds when the new Hellraiser movie came out because it was supposed to be on Hulu, but they didn't get it there.
We don't. Yeah,
so I think that it's like,
and you can't project it on. Yeah, trust me. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. Thank you, guys.
Someone just mentioned Serpent in the Rainbow. We'll have to do an episode on that. Pascal can talk about why he hates it.
We've done an episode. Go back. We did a whole episode on voodoo, and we definitely talk about Serpent in the Rainbow, the history of the man that actually wrote the book, why he hated it, why he didn't want Wes Craven to be tied to it. David Lynch was literally going to be tied to it. Yeah, we've done a whole episode. Dr. Paul McComb, I forget what it was called, but I think it's like What is Voodoo or something like that. We did a whole episode on the history of voodoo. So, on that note, we are out.
Back when Russia was the Union of Soviet Social Republics, and they'd say, "Oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America?" I said, "Well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers, and they have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government."